Chapter 917. Yi Guchen's words indeed shocked everyone. But after the uproar, the majority of people looked at Yi Guchen with suspicion. It was understandable for a young man to be frivolous. But if it was pure arrogance, it would appear a little ignorant. As one of the 4 great secret domains of the Sword Dynasty, Mount Saint Crossing had always been respected by many experts. To pass the 10th level of Mount Saint Crossing and become a disciple of the Holy Emblem was the goal of all the heaven prides of the 5 great academies. In the face of Mount Saint Crossing, even someone as strong as Wuxia had to carefully prepare and go all out. And Yi Guchen's words, in the eyes of others, were not only looking down on Mount Saint Crossing, but also stepping on the heaven prides who regarded Mount Saint Crossing as a sacred goal. I originally asked for this Dugu Wubai because I admired his courage to face the Hua family and the false saint, but now it seems that Dugu Wubai's temperament still needs to be sharpened. Yes, he dared to say such words without knowing Mount Saint Crossing. He is a little ignorant. Some lords also revealed a look of disappointment. They admired Yi Guchen for being able to face the pressure of the Hua family. They thought that the unaffiliated cultivator camp had finally produced a heaven pride who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Wuxia. However, Yi Guchen's current performance had left them slightly disappointed. Dugu Wubai, you don't have to be like this. Beixian Elder also advised. In his view, given Yi Guchen's talent, he might be able to pass the 10th level if he cultivated wholeheartedly for a year and broke through to the divine dwelling stage. As for 3 months, it was really too rushed. Even Great Elder Imei's face was a little solemn, but he didn't say anything. Feeling the many questioning gazes around, Yi Guchen's expression was calm and collected. Mount Saint Crossing may be an insurmountable moat in the eyes of others. But for Yi Guchen, such a challenge was interesting. Good boy, since you are so confident, why don't you make a bet with me? Hua Yuntao squinted his eyes, revealing a trace of coldness. What are we betting? Yi Guchen asked calmly. In 3 months, if you can pass the 10th level of Mount Saint Crossing, my Hua family will do its best to satisfy you. Of course, if you can't pass, then this old man won't make things difficult for you. As long as you join my Hua family, Hua Yuntao said. Oh, Yi Guchen raised his eyebrows. Joining the Hua family was tantamount to controlling Yi Guchen and turning Yi Guchen into a dog of the Hua family. Dugu Wubai, you don't have to agree. Beixian Elder said hurriedly. He was afraid that Yi Guchen would agree to Hua Yuntao's bet. But can your Hua family give me what I want? Yi Guchen sneered. What do you want? Hua Yuntao asked calmly. Yi Guchen then listed a few things, including soul crystals, sacred soul medicine, and the materials needed to refine his doppelganger. Hua Yuntao squinted his eyes and said, We don't have any sacred soul medicine, but the Hua family has 1 bone molding pill. Okay. Yi Guchen said with a deep look in his eyes. He knew in his heart that it was impossible for such a large Hua clan to not have even a single stock of soul-type panacea. Hua Yuntao must also know that the sacred soul medicine might be helpful to Yi Guchen's cultivation, so he didn't take it out. But the bone molding pill was only useful for people who were missing limbs or had broken bones. Hua Yuntao couldn't see why Yi Guchen wanted the bone molding pill, so he directly threw out the bone molding pill. This Beixian Elder sighed deeply. Hua Yuntao's bet had completely trapped Yi Guchen. In everyone's eyes, this was a bet that had already been decided. In the end, Yi Guchen would still be pulled into the Hua family. This kid is still too young and ignorant. Huayamo sneered. What was the use of creating such a storm? In the end it was all in vain. Okay, let's go. Dugu Wubai, I'll be waiting for you at Mount Saint Crossing in 3 months. If you don't keep your promise. Hua Yuntao's voice suddenly turned cold, and the temperature of the surroundings seemed to drop. Don't worry, I won't go so far as to break my promise, Yi Guchen said casually. Hua Yuntao was expressionless as he left with Huayamo and the other members of Tensei College, as well as the prodigies who had joined Tensei College. Following the departure of Heavenly Saint Academy, the tense atmosphere in the area suddenly relaxed. Haha. Heroes come from the young. When the time comes, Long River College will definitely be there to watch the ceremony. Elder Yin Li from Long River College sneered. Yin Wufeng from the Yin family had also been beaten up badly by Yi Guchen. Naturally, Ainli didn't have a good impression of Yi Guqin. After that, the people from Long River College also left with a group of prodigies. Brother Duga's courage is admirable. In 3 months, I will also go to Mount Saint Crossing to watch the ceremony. When the time comes, I hope that Brother Dugu will not be stingy with his guidance. Jiang Fengmian smiled faintly and elegantly. What does Jiang Fengmian mean? Is he going to step on Dugu Wubai as well? Many people were surprised. Jiang Fengmian you. Mu Xingzu frowned. She felt that Jiang Fengmian was targeting Yi Guqin because of her. It's okay. I will naturally fight with young Master Jiang in the future, Yi Guqin said. Goodbye. Jiang Fengmian saluted. Hey Dugu Wubai, although you are not weak, don't brag too much. My cousin will probably fight with you, Sheng Guanyan said. Yi Guqin was puzzled. It's Shengguan Jingshan, that annoying guy. Mu Xingzu mumbled. It seems that you are quite popular. Yi Guqin did not mind and smiled faintly. No. Xingzhu has never cared about any man, except. Mu Xingzu blushed and mumbled. You don't have to care about my feelings when it comes to relationships. If it is suitable, you can decide for yourself, Yi Guqin said. Mu Xingzu twisted her fingers together and sighed in her heart. After seeing how outstanding Yi Guqin was, which man could enter Mu Xingzu's eyes? If you underestimate my cousin, you will suffer. Sheng Guanyan saw that Yi Guqin was not nervous at all, and could not help but snort. After that, Sheng Guanyan also left with the people from Sun Moon College. Only the people from Sacred Cliff College and Tianxian College were left in the entire Thunder Prison Mountain. The atmosphere was no longer as tense as before. It was obvious that the relationship between these two colleges was quite good. Dugu Wubai, your courage is commendable. Elder Ime smiled amiably. I have embarrassed myself in front of you elders. Yi Guqin cupped his fist slightly. Seeing Yi Guqin's current attitude, Elder Ime, Beishian Elder, and the others were all puzzled. At this moment, it seemed that Yi Guqin was not an arrogant person. Perhaps, he really had the confidence to pass the sacred mountain? No matter what happens 3 months later, at least now, you are a disciple of Sacred Cliff College, Elder Ime said with a smile. Just as Yi Guqin was about to leave with Elder Ime, a mature and gentle voice suddenly sounded. Wait, I still have something to talk to this young man. Wu Hongyan's flawless face was staring at Yi Guqin with a faint smile. Ahem. You guys talk first, I am not in a hurry. Elder Ime coughed dryly, and hurriedly retreated as if he was avoiding a tigress. Wu Hongyan was someone that even their dean did not want to provoke. It was better to stay away from a female fake saint with a violent temper. Chapter 9:18. Yi Guqin remained calm when he sensed Wu Hongyan's gaze on him. He did not sense any malice from Wu Hongyan. In addition, Wu Hongyan had helped him before. Yi Guqin still had good intentions toward this woman. Thank you for your help this time, Dean Wu. Yi Guqin cupped his hands in salute. What Dean Wu? You're so old-fashioned. Call me big sister. Wu Hongyan raised her brows and crossed her arms. Yi Guqin was speechless. And I didn't do it to help you. I did it to help that stubborn girl, Xingzhu. Wu Hongyan gritted her teeth as soon as she saw Mu Xingzu. When Mu Xingzu passed the 15th level of Mount Saint Crossing, Wu Hongyan was naturally the happiest. This was like picking up a treasure. Wu Hongyan did not hesitate and immediately wanted to take Mu Xingzu as her disciple. However, Mu Xingzu rejected her. Many people could not understand why Mu Xingzu would reject the disciple request of a false sage. In the end, Mu Xingzu said that she already had a master. Now the truth was out. Even Wu Hongyan did not expect that the master that Mu Xingzu spoke of was Yi Guqin. Wu Hongyan felt angry when she thought of this. Her delicate body flashed and directly appeared in front of Yi Guqin. She bent down slightly. Her beautiful face was as charming as a fox immortal as she approached Yi Guqin. A rich and fragrant scent wafted toward him. Yi Guqin faced it calmly. Kong Kong stood beside Yi Guqin. Her little face was dazed. She covered her nose with both hands again. Blood flowed out from between her fingers. The weather today is so big and so round. Kong Kong felt that she would die from excessive blood loss. Dugu Wubai, you stole my beloved disciple. What should you do? Wu Hongyan asked with a smile. Dean, you're too close. Mu Xingzu couldn't help but mutter softly. Oh, the little girl is jealous. Don't worry, I won't pull out this tender grass. The person she likes is the Sword King. Wu Hongyan couldn't help but tease. Senior Wu, it's Xingzhu's decision on who she chooses as her master. I can't influence her. Yi Guqin said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. What if I want you to dissolve your master-disciple relationship with Xingzhu? Wu Hongyan was still smiling, but her words seemed to freeze the air. Principal Yu. Mu Xingzu's expression froze. Yi Guqin's expression didn't change, and he said indifferently, unless Xingzhu is willing, I can't abandon her. Oh. Wu Hongyan took a step forward, and the aura of a false saint burst out. Yi Guqin was under pressure again, but his expression didn't change. Bei Xian Elder and the others were a little nervous. They were afraid that Wu Hongyan would do something. After all, Wu Hongyan had always been fearless. She could do anything. Seeing that Yi Guqin was indifferent, Wu Hongyan withdrew her aura, and her expression softened. It seems that Xingzhu didn't choose you for no reason. I don't ask for much. If you can pass the 10th level of Mount Saint Crossing in 3 months, you'll still be Xingzhu's master. However, if you can't pass it, it proves that you're no longer qualified to be Xingzhu's master. Of course. Yi Guqin nodded. Even Mu Xingzhu had passed the 15th level. If Yi Guqin couldn't pass the 10th level, he was indeed no longer qualified to teach Mu Xingzhu. Master. Mu Xingzhu's expression changed slightly. Don't you trust me? Yi Guqin smiled. Mu Xingzhu bit her lip with her pearly white teeth and nodded firmly. Seeing this, Wu Hongyan's lips curled into a faint smile. To be honest, Wu Hongyan didn't think that Yi Guqin would have the strength to reach the 10th level of Mount Saint Crossing in 3 months. When that time came, Wu Hongyan could take advantage of the situation and accept Mu Xingzhu as her disciple. Of course, Wu Hongyan wasn't scheming. She just wanted to train Mu Xingzhu better. All right, let's leave it at that for the time being. Wu Hongyan waved her hand. Dean, I think. Mu Xingzhu wanted to say something, but stopped. You're helping an outsider. Go ahead. However, remember that you're still a disciple of the holy emblem of Tianxian College. Wu Hongyan touched her forehead. Thank you, Dean. Mu Xingzhu was delighted. She knew that although the female dean was a little overbearing and violent, she was still kind at heart. Then Wu Hongyan and the other people of Tianxian College left. Kong Kong looked at Wu Hongyan's back reluctantly. His nose was bleeding. In the end, Kong Kong, Han Lingxian, and Yan Wuka all joined Sacred Cliff College. All right, let's go back to the college. Elder Ime waved his hand. Yi Guqin and the others boarded Sacred Cliff College's ship and headed towards Sacred Cliff College. With the departure of Sacred Cliff College, the 5 academies selection also came to an end. However, one could imagine what kind of shock the appearance of Yi Guqin, the Dark Horse, would cause in the Sword Dynasty. After all, hundreds of lords and people from various aristocratic families had witnessed the rise of the Sword Demon with their own eyes. It wouldn't take long for the name of the Sword Demon to sweep through the entire Sword Dynasty like a storm. Everyone would know that another monstrous figure would rise in the Sword Dynasty. Of course, along with the fame, there would be even more criticism. After all, Yi Guqin challenging Mount Saint Crossing in 3 months was indeed a little arrogant in the eyes of others. There were even some people who were hostile to Yi Guqin, such as the Hua family, the Yin family, the Yu family, and so on. They were all waiting for Yi Guqin to embarrass himself at Mount Saint Crossing in 3 months. If Yi Guqin couldn't pass by then, not only would he lose Mu Xingzhu as his disciple, but he would also become a slave of the Hua family. The name of the Sword Demon would also fall. In the eyes of the crowd, what could be changed in these short 3 months? Not long after the 5 academies selection ended, somewhere in the Sword Dynasty, on top of a mountain, a pavilion was located in the middle of it. As far as the eye could see, the sea of clouds was billowing, and the scenery was spectacular. Inside the pavilion, a middle-aged man was leaning against the pavilion pillar. He was wearing a snow-white robe, and his face was incomparably handsome. There was a cinnabar mole between his eyebrows, which made the man handsome, and at the same time had a sense of mystery. Beside him was a red umbrella, and one hand was holding a wine gourd. When did the human world have wine? Asking the heavens about love. The man picked up the wine gourd and took a long sip. He was unadorned and handsome, like a jade mountain that was about to collapse. At this moment, a stooped figure stepped on the sea of clouds and landed in the pavilion. The man raised his eyes and looked at the person who came. It was an old man with a stooped body and a walking stick. His snow-white beard was very long, like a horsetail whisk that dragged to the ground. If Yi Guchen was here, he would definitely be surprised. This old man was the crippled old man who asked him for wine in Thunder City. Sword King, you are really in the mood for leisure. The crippled old man looked at the middle-aged man and laughed. Confusi, is everything done? The middle-aged man's lips curved into a warm smile. If the name Confusi was passed to the ears of anyone in the Sword Dynasty, it would definitely shock them, because the mysterious dean of Sacred Cliff College was Confusi. Chapter 919. It's done. I got Ime to do it. Yi Guchen has already joined Sacred Cliff College, Confusi said with a smile. As expected of Yi Guchen, the one who stole the primordial sword and stirred up a storm. Even in my Sword Dynasty, he's still unwilling to remain silent. Even I'm a little curious about the Mount Saint crossing in 3 months. The man called Sword Sovereign chuckled and continued drinking. I'm a little curious. When did Sword Sovereign know that Yi Guchen had come to the Sword Dynasty? Confusi asked. He has the Sword Master token. I sensed it the moment he stepped into the Sword Dynasty, but I wasn't sure. The man shook his head slightly. It's indeed surprising. I heard that Yi Guchen survived after taking the 9 death no regrets pill. Confusi also sighed with emotion. Yi Guchen was really lucky. Perhaps this is fate? The man's eyes flickered inexplicably. Sword Sovereign, do you mean that Yi Guchen has the ability to save the Alliance Master? Confusi asked in surprise. I'm not sure, but it's rumored that he's also a member of the Sword Sect Echelon, and has the primordial sword. If he performs well on Mount Saint Crossing, then it's indeed possible, the man said slowly. Sword Sovereign, do you think that Yi Guchen can compare to your disciple, Jian Jinghong? Confusi asked. Yi Guchen can use the primordial sword God-devouring sword, so there's no need to compete. But if he can't, Jian Jinghong has the embryonic form of the heavenly Dao sword intent. He might not be weaker than Yi Guchen, the man said indifferently. The sword intent of the creation realm is indeed powerful. But no matter what, Yi Guchen and Jian Jinghong are both candidates. It's been 5 years since the Alliance Master was trapped. Confusi sighed slightly. The Sword Dao Alliance Master had not appeared for 5 years. Although it was announced to the public that he was in seclusion, some of the aristocratic families in the Sword Dao Alliance could no longer hold back. Over the years, the fake saint families led by the Hua family couldn't sit still, and began to wantonly recruit the lords of various regions. If it weren't for Sword Sovereign, it's hard to imagine how chaotic the Sword Dynasty would be. Confusi let out a long sigh. The identity of the man in front of him was none other than that. It was the Sword Dao Alliance's Vice-Alliance leader, Sword Sovereign, Heavenly Sentiment. It's not just those aristocratic families. The War God Dynasty, the Mola Dynasty, and the Tyrannical Saber Dynasty are probably unable to hold themselves back as well. Heavensoft smiled faintly. The Sword Dynasty was still the leader of the 100 great dynasties. Everything seemed calm and tranquil, but a storm was brewing in the dark. If not for fear, the Sword Dao Alliance's Alliance Master would still be alive. Most likely, these forces would have already lost their patience and attacked, tearing apart the Sword Dynasty like hungry wolves. Alliance leader, is he really still here? Even Confusi couldn't help but ask. After all, the Sword Dao Alliance's Alliance Master hadn't appeared for 5 years. Don't worry, Big Brother was able to contend against a true heavenly tribulation saint as a fake saint. He won't die so easily. Heavensoft smiled faintly, looking extremely handsome. Next, it's up to Yi Guchen's performance on Mount Saint Crossing. The matter of rescuing Big Brother can't be delayed for too long. Heavensoft got up, pinned the wine gourd to his waist, and held up the red umbrella in his hand. He stepped on the sea of clouds, as ethereal as a celestial being descending to the mortal world. Handsome and ethereal. Looking at Heavensoft's departing figure, Confuzi clicked his tongue and sighed. In the 5 years that the Sword Dao Alliance's alliance master disappeared, the Sword Dynasty was plagued by internal and external troubles, and all the pressure was on Heavensoft. But Heavensoft was able to keep the external troubles at bay with his own strength. Outside, he intimidated the War God Dynasty, the Mola Dynasty, the Tyrannical Saber Dynasty, and other powerful dynasties. Internally, he suppressed the Hua family, the Jiang family, the Yin family, the Shangguan family, and other fake saint families. If it weren't for the Sword King, the Sword Dynasty would have been in chaos. Confuzi shook his head and sighed. Although he was a fake saint expert and one of the best among the 5 deans, he still felt powerless in the face of such chaos. I really don't know if Yi Guqin is the 7th Sword Master's chosen one. If he can really rescue the alliance leader, then it's not impossible for him to become the lord of the Sword Dynasty in the future, let alone the position of Jiankui. Confuzi muttered to himself. In the sky, a huge ship crossed the void. It was the ship of Sacred Cliff College. Yi Guqin took the ship to the location of Sacred Cliff College. Along the way, Mu Xingzu stuck close to Yi Guqin and did not leave his side at all. After all, she had heard that Yi Guqin had died. Now that she had regained what she had lost, one could imagine how Mu Xingzu felt. It was reasonable for her to act like this. This made Han Lingxian feel a little jealous. Yi Guqin did not mind. After all, Yi Guqin was still able to be with his old friends in an unfamiliar dynasty. This made him sigh. I wonder how the people of the Sword Sect are doing? Yi Guqin sighed in his heart. Yan Chang'e, Yan Wushuang, Jiling Chuqingqi, and Yi Xie flashed past one by one. Yan Wushuang and the others have passed the preliminaries. They should be participating in the Prodigy battlefield. I can see them then, Yi Guqin thought to himself. When they arrived at the Prodigy battlefield, the name of the Sword Sect's Yi Guqin would reappear in the world. Yan Wushuang and the others would also know that Yi Guqin was not dead. He was still alive and even stronger. There's also Master Feng, Hongxue, Su Jianshi. Yi Guqin was most apologetic towards these 3 people. Yi Guqin did not know what happened to Feng Manlu. He thought that Feng Manlu had already fallen. Master, I will definitely avenge you. Hongxue, one day, I will go to the Immortal Valley to find you and Su Jianshi. Within 3 years, I will step into the Heavenly God Sword Sect's mountain gate and find you. Yi Guqin's eyes were cold. He needed to grow quickly, and the Sword Dynasty's Sacred Cliff College was the best place for Yi Guqin to grow. After a few days, Yi Guqin finally arrived at the location of Sacred Cliff College. Sacred Cliff College was located in the Divine Cliff Ridge of the 360 Ridges. The entire ridge was named after Sacred Cliff College. After entering the Divine Cliff Ridge, Yi Guqin finally saw Sacred Cliff College after a few hours. Sacred Cliff College was not built in the city, but in a paradise. Yi Guqin looked around and saw an undulating mountain range. Clouds and mist were rising and falling, and the cliffs were strange peaks. The mountains were beautiful, and the clouds were scattered. It was a blessed land of immortals. At least in the Saint Origin dynasty, it was impossible to find a paradise with such abundant spiritual qi. There were many palaces and pavilions in the blessed enclave. Many figures could be seen flashing through them. This paradise is called the Divine Cliff Paradise. It's where Sacred Cliff College is located. Beixian Elder saw the surprise in Yi Guqin's eyes. He could not help but puff out his chest and smile proudly. This paradise was probably one of the few things Sacred Cliff College was proud of. It is indeed a paradise for cultivation. Yi Guqin could not help but say. Of course. After all, Sacred Cliff College was the first college established in the Sword Dynasty. Beixian Elder could not help but sigh as he recalled the glorious past. Oh, Sacred Cliff College had such a past? Yi Guqin raised his eyebrows. Chapter 920. Yi Guqin didn't know much about the 5 great colleges. However, he knew that Sacred Cliff College was ranked at the bottom among the 5 great colleges. Although the Sword Dynasty can't be compared to those hegemon-level forces with tens of thousands of years of history, we still have a long history. When the Sword Dynasty was first established, Sacred Cliff College was already established. After that, The other 4 colleges were established on the basis of Sacred Cliff College. Beishian Elder was quite proud of this period of history. Then now why? Yiguchen paused. Sigh, it's all because of those fake saint families. Forget it, you'll know when the time comes. Beishian Elder was a little dispirited when he mentioned this. Yiguchen saw this and didn't ask any more questions. Anyway, he would know what he needed to know in the future. The ship stopped outside the Holy Cliff Cave, and everyone disembarked. Beishian, I'll leave these people to you. After Elder Ime finished speaking, he floated away. Everyone follow me. Beishian Elder waved his hand. Yiguchen and the others followed Beishian Elder into the Holy Cliff Cave. As a famous treasure land of the Sword Dynasty, the Holy Cliff Cave was full of spirit chi and precious herbs, and rare flowers were everywhere. Supreme-grade precious herbs could be seen everywhere. Even Yiguchen was speechless when he saw this. The Hua family and the other aristocratic families are very jealous of this Holy Cliff Cave. Beishian Elder sneered. Yiguchen's eyes dimmed. It seemed that Sacred Cliff College wasn't completely safe. Not long after, Yiguchen saw 2 towering mountains in front of him. One of the mountains had the word divine carved on it, and the other had the word cliff carved on it. Between the 2 strange peaks, there was a huge ancient mountain gate. At this moment, inside the mountain gate, there was a large crowd of people. They were obviously the disciples of Sacred Cliff College. Looking at the crowd, Yiguchen sighed. Although Sacred Cliff College was ranked last among the 5 major colleges, there were still quite a number of prodigies among them. Is that the sword demon Dugawubai? He doesn't seem to have 3 heads and 6 arms. TSK. That Dugawubai is so handsome. I heard that he was called the sword demon, but I thought he was just a rough man with a scar on his face. As soon as Yiguchen appeared, he immediately caused a commotion among many Sacred Cliff College disciples. Some of the female disciples looked at Yiguchen with sparkling eyes. In just a few days, the news of what had happened in the Sword Sovereign's ruins had spread throughout the Sword Dynasty. The name of the Sword Demon had completely spread throughout the Sword Dynasty. Of course, Yiguchen's arrogance also spread along with the name of the Sword Demon. Is there a need to cheer for someone who has only been in Sacred Cliff College for 3 months? At this moment, a slightly discordant voice sounded. The cheers all around quieted down. It was obvious that this person was not an ordinary person. Yiguchen raised his eyebrows slightly. What this meant was that after 3 months, Yiguchen would not be able to pass Mount Saint Crossing, and would be transferred to Tensei College. Yiguchen looked over and saw that it was a young man in a purple shirt with an extraordinary bearing. There was a golden badge pinned to his chest. A disciple with a golden badge, Yiguchen muttered. He is the prodigy of the Jiang family, Jiang Yan. He is ranked 17th on the sword ranking, Mu Xingzu said. The Jiang family? The first person Yiguchen thought of was Jiang Fengmian. It seemed that this Jiang Yan was related to Jiang Fengmian. Jiang Yan first glanced at Yiguchen, then turned to Mu Xingzu with a faint smile on his face. Welcome to Sacred Cliff College, Miss Mu. Humph. Mu Xingzu did not respond. Miss Mu, it is not good to have an arrogant and ignorant person as your master, Jiang Yan said. As a member of the Jiang family, Jiang Yan naturally sided with Jiang Fengmian. Everyone knew that Jiang Fengmian was pursuing Mu Xingzu. Therefore, Jiang Yan did not like Yiguchen. Enough, stop talking, Beishian Elder said. Apart from the Holy Emblem disciples, the Gold Emblem disciples had the highest status. Even as an elder, he could not order Jiang Yan around. Not to mention that Jiang Yan had the backing of the Jiang family. Okay, I will stop talking. Anyway, we will see in 3 months, Jiang Yan said with a faint smile. Right at this moment, another beautiful figure appeared. It was a woman in a long black dress. She was tall and slender, and her black hair was tied up, revealing her slender neck. She also had a gold emblem on her chest, which represented her identity as a Gold Emblem disciple. Although her face was not extremely beautiful, it was delicate and embellished with a hint of coldness. Seeing this woman, the surrounding Sacred Cliff College disciples automatically parted. The woman in the black dress walked to Yiguchen without hesitation. Yiguchen raised his eyebrows. Was she targeting him again? Dugawubai, is it? The woman in the black dress asked coldly. That's right, Yi Guchen said. You are too selfish, the woman in the black dress said. What do you mean? Even with Yi Guchen's personality, he was amused. He thought that this woman was also a heavenly talent and might be targeting him. However, he did not expect that this woman would say that he was selfish. You have extraordinary talent. If you grow up in the future, you will be a great help to Sacred Cliff College. However, you are arrogant and ignorant. In 3 months, you will challenge the Saint Crossing Mountain. If you fail, you will transfer to Tensei College. Since you chose the Divine Cliff Academy, you shouldered the responsibility of being a disciple of the Divine Cliff Academy. However, for your own selfish reasons, you let yourself fall into a gamble that you were sure to lose, causing my Divine Cliff Academy to lose a genius disciple. Tell me, if this isn't selfish, then what is? The woman in the black dress questioned him repeatedly. Yi Guchen was speechless. This woman in the black dress was quite eloquent. Yi Guchen did nothing wrong, but the woman made it sound as if he was extremely selfish. As the woman's voice faded, the spectating disciples of the Divine Cliff Academy also quieted down. He looked at Yi Guchen with a doubtful look in his eyes. No one doubted Yi Guchen's strength. After all, he defeated Hua Xingjie and the others. However, it was indeed a little ignorant to say that he could challenge the Saint Crossing Mountain. That's enough, Ling Mayin. Beixian Elder also had a headache. Mu Xingzu couldn't stand it anymore. She stood up and shouted, "What is this? Is this moral blackmail? Master should make the choice himself." Moreover, with Master's talent and strength, other colleges would be fighting to recruit Master even if he didn't choose Tensei College. Why must Master come to Sacred Cliff College? Yi Guchen might not care about Ling Mayin's questioning. However, Mu Xingzu couldn't stand Ling Mayin slandering Yi Guchen. Ling Mayin was at a loss for words. Indeed, with Yi Guchen's talent, he chose Sacred Cliff College because he thought highly of Sacred Cliff College. Master, since Sacred Cliff College doesn't welcome you, why don't you go to Tianxian College with Xingzhu? I'm sure Dean Wu Hongyan will also welcome you. Mu Xingzu held Yi Guchen's hand and was about to leave. Hey, my lady, don't go. Beixian Elder saw this and hurriedly stopped her. Yi Guchen was the winner of the 5 academies selection. If he was tricked into Tianxian College, it would be a big loss. Although it was very likely that Yi Guchen wouldn't be able to stay in Sacred Cliff College after 3 months. But what if? Beixian Elder couldn't bear this torment. Chapter 921. Shut up, all of you. If anyone dares to spout nonsense again, don't blame me for being merciless. Beixian Elder scolded Ling Mayin, Jiang Yan, and the others. Then he turned to face Yi Guchen and said, "Dugu, my young friend, please don't take offense. Sacred Cliff College welcomes you with open arms." From beginning to end, Yi Guchen's expression was extremely calm. He was not angered by Jiang Yan, Ling Mayin, and the others' provocation. "Of course I don't mind," Yi Guchen said casually. To be honest, the 5 major colleges did not make much of a difference to him. Yi Guchen did not need to be taught. He only needed resources and a place to grow. It was the same everywhere. However, the sword monk Xuanlian, who ranked 4th on the sword ranking list, was also in Sacred Cliff College. Yi Guchen did not forget to ask him some questions. Alright, all the new students can rest for 3 days. 3 days later, the admission ceremony will be held and you will be ranked, Beixian Elder said. Yi Guchen's eyes lit up when he heard this. He had climbed to the top of the mountain. If there were no accidents, he would definitely become a Silver Emblem disciple. Moreover, he had pulled out the 9 Dragon Thunder prison sword. It was not impossible for him to become a Gold Emblem disciple. Disciples of different ranks would receive different amounts of resources. Yi Guchen was currently in a state of poverty. This was the time when he needed resources. Ling Mayin snorted coldly. Her beautiful eyes glanced coldly at Yi Guchen before she left. "See you in 3 days." Jiang Yan smiled faintly and also left. He had heard that Sacred Cliff College would not give Yi Guchen any special treatment. In other words, Jiang Yan expected Yi Guchen to become a Silver Emblem disciple at most. As for becoming a Gold Emblem disciple, it was not that simple. Su Fan, take our young friend Dugu and the others to a temporary place to stay and wait for the admission ceremony in 3 days, Beixian elder said. Yes, everyone. Please follow me. There was a silver badge pinned on his chest. Clearly, he was a Silver Emblem disciple. A Silver Emblem disciple's status in the academy was not low. After all, there were only a few Holy Emblem disciples and Gold Emblem disciples. Below them were the Silver Emblem disciples. With Yi Guqin's talent and strength, it was certain that he would become a Silver Emblem disciple. Therefore, when facing Yi Guqin and the others, Su Fan did not put on any airs. Seeing that Yi Guqin and the others were led away, the rest of the Sacred Cliff College students also dispersed. However, they also wanted to know what kind of status Sacred Cliff College would give to the sword demon who caused a huge commotion in the Sword Supreme ruins. He should be a Silver Emblem disciple. After all, Dugu Wu bypassed the peak of the Thunder Prison Mountain. I don't think so. He might be a Gold Emblem disciple. A Gold Emblem disciple? That's too fast, isn't it? What do you mean by fast? Who knows, he might become a Holy Emblem disciple in 3 months. Are you mocking the sword demon? On the other hand, Su Fan led Yi Guqin and the others on a quiet path. He looked at Yi Guqin and hesitated. In the end he said, Brother Dugu, I hope you won't hold a grudge against senior sister Ling. Oh. Yi Guqin raised his eyebrows slightly. Why can't he? That woman is so mean. Can't he hate her? Mu Xingzu said with slight displeasure. Mu Xingzu would become very sensitive whenever something related to Yi Guqin was involved. Sigh, actually senior sister Ling is also a pitiful person. You must have heard of her brother. His name is Ling Emoshu. Su Fan sighed. Ling Emoshu, the former Holy Emblem disciple of Sacred Cliff College. Ranked 10th on the sword leaderboard? Mu Xingzu said in surprise. Han Lingxian, Yin Chouku, and the others were also surprised. I'd like to hear the details, Yi Guqin said. Then Su Fan told Yi Guqin some things. It turned out that Ling Maoyin and Ling Emoshu were a pair of siblings. Both of them were talented. Of course, Ling Emoshu was stronger. Before the sword monk Xuanlian came to Sacred Cliff College, Ling Emoshu was the strongest genius of Sacred Cliff College, ranked 10th on the sword leaderboard, a disciple of the Holy Emblem, and a Divine Palace expert. At that time, Ling Maoyin's personality was completely different from now. Under the protection of Ling Emoshu, she was innocent, gentle, and amiable. Then what happened later? Yi Guqin was slightly interested. Every year, the 5 academies hold the 5 academies grand tournament. In one of the 5 academies grand tournament, senior brother Ling Emoshu faced Hua Wuxia. In the end, Su Fan sighed deeply. I know that. That Ling Moshu's right arm was forcibly severed by Hua Wuxia. Furthermore, his divine palace was destroyed. Henceforth he became a cripple, Mu Xingzhu said. That's right. After that, senior brother Ling Moshu drank all day and was dispirited. As his sister, senior sister Ling was under a lot of pressure. She also cultivated madly, and wanted to take revenge even in her dreams. She wanted to lead the Divine Cliff Academy and completely suppress the Heavenly Saint Academy. You can imagine how much pain senior sister Ling was in. After that, her personality changed drastically. She became cold and mean. Su Fan shook his head and sighed. I see. Yi Guqin nodded slightly. Even Mu Xingzhu and the others did not say much. Ling Maoyin's experience was indeed lamentable. Anyone who saw a loved one who used to protect them become a cripple and decadent person would suffer great pain. I hope Brother Dugu doesn't blame senior sister Ling, Su Fan said. Don't worry. I don't care. Yi Guqin smiled. Even if Su Fan did not say these words, Yi Guqin would not have cared. That's good. Su Fan smiled in relief. Ling Emoshu. If there's a chance, I'd like to meet him, Yi Guqin thought to himself. Since Ling Emoshu was ranked 10th on the sword list and a disciple of the Holy Emblem, his strength should be extraordinary. Yi Guqin was considering whether he could help Ling Emoshu get out of the abyss of decadence. After all, Yi Guqin and his master, Feng Manlu, had their cultivations destroyed. However, he had also walked out a path of martial arts that belonged to him. Yi Guqin believed that with his vision, he would definitely be able to enlighten Ling Moshu. At that time, Ling Maoyin would no longer target him. Then, Su Fan led Yi Guqin and the others to their temporary residence. You're only staying here temporarily. After the admission ceremony, you'll be assigned different cave residences, Su Fan said. Thank you. May I ask if the sword monk, Xuanlian, is in the academy? Yi Guqin asked. Yes. Where is my senior brother? Kong Kong asked. Senior brother Xuanlian is out on a mission. After all, in our academy, we don't raise flowers in a greenhouse. All the disciples go out to experience life and death battles, Su Fan said. I see. Thank you, brother Su Fan. Yi Guqin cupped his fists. He was not in a hurry. Then, Su Fan briefly introduced the cultivation grounds of Sacred Cliff College to Yi Guqin. For example, the Sword Soul Cave, the Spirit Gathering Pavilion, the Elixir Pond in the Divine Abode, and so on were all good places to improve a martial artist's cultivation. Of course, the most mysterious cultivation ground of Sacred Cliff College is the Seven-Sword Ancient Tower. When Su Fan mentioned the Seven-Sword Ancient Tower, his tone became solemn. Seven-Sword Ancient Tower? Yi Guqin's eyes flashed. He noticed from the corner of his eye that Mu Xingzu's expression changed slightly. Chapter 922. Brother Dugu, you should know that Sacred Cliff College was the first and oldest college in the Sword Dynasty. The Seven-Sword Ancient Pagoda has existed since the founding of Sacred Cliff College. Su Fan smiled. It's that old? Yi Guqin was slightly surprised. Rumor has it that the Seven-Sword Ancient Pagoda has existed since the founding of the Sword Dynasty. Sacred Cliff College expanded outwards with the Seven-Sword Ancient Pagoda as the center, Su Fan said. How can I enter the Seven-Sword Ancient Pagoda? Yi Guqin was interested. Haha, it's not that easy to enter the Seven-Sword Ancient Pagoda. Only the disciples of the Holy Emblem are qualified to enter. However, in the past, the disciples of the Holy Emblem have only entered the outer pagoda. No one has ever entered the inner pagoda, Su Fan said. I see. What's so special about the Seven-Sword Ancient Pagoda? Yi Guqin continued asking. The outer pagoda is rumored to contain many opportunities in the way of the sword. The disciples of the Holy Emblem who entered the outer pagoda all improved greatly without exception. As for the inner pagoda, even the disciples of the Holy Emblem could not enter, so no one knows what's inside, Su Fan said. I see. Thank you for your explanation. Yi Guqin smiled. He had not yet become a disciple of the Holy Emblem, so he did not need to think too much about it. After that, Su Fan left. Yi Guqin and the others found a place to stay and waited for the admission ceremony in 3 days. In a quiet room, Yi Guqin and Mu Xingzu were in the same room. Mu Xingzu had not had the chance to catch up with Yi Guqin because of the previous incidents. She did not want to leave Yi Guqin's side. Although Mu Xingzu had grown up on her own during this period of time, she was still Yi Guqin's pillar. However, Yi Guqin was still the pillar of support in her heart after all. At this moment, she was displaying the coquettish and dependent attitude of a young girl. Yi Guqin roughly explained what had happened after Mu Xingzu left. Mu Xingzu listened with trepidation. It's great that the senior brothers and sisters of the Sword Sex Pagoda Forest are still safe. Mu Xingzu heaved a sigh of relief. If nothing unexpected happens, we should meet again at the battlefield of Heaven's favorites, Yi Guqin said with a faint smile. The people from the Sword Sex Tower Forest were brought back to the Swallow Cloud Dynasty by Yen Chang'e. In the future, they would meet again in the battlefield of prodigies. When senior sister Yen and the others see us, they will definitely be so surprised that they won't be able to close their mouths. Mu Xingzu said with a smile. Yen Wushuang. Yi Guqin muttered with a slightly complicated expression. His heart was filled with guilt towards Su Jianshi and Situ Hongxue. He had indeed neglected the fact that there was a girl who was worried about him. Shaking his head slightly, Yi Guqin got rid of the distracting thoughts. After all, they would meet again when the time came. At this moment, the blue crystal hanging around Mu Xingzu's neck suddenly flashed. A gentle, graceful, and beautiful figure appeared. She was wearing a blue robe that was translucent. Her features were picturesque and her skin was as white as snow. It was Ying Ning. Senior Ning, long time no see. Yi Guchen smiled faintly. Mu Xingzu was able to grow at such a fast speed and rise in the Sword Dynasty. Ning's contribution was definitely not negligible. I didn't expect you to have such a complicated experience. Also, I feel a powerful soul pressure in your body. Ning's eyes were deep as she looked at Yi Guchen. An azure-robed figure also appeared behind Yi Guchen. Interesting. You're not a tribulation saint yet, but you can condense an origin soul. The azure-robed figure was naturally Su Qingyu. He also looked at Ning with some interest. A saint's origin soul. Ning's eyes were filled with shock. Primordial spirits could only be condensed by heavenly tribulation saints. She had an origin soul because of her 8th grade talent, the immortal soul pearl. Although Su Qingyu's origin soul had no power left, it was still a saint's origin soul. Facing such an existence, Ning also felt a great pressure. Fortunately, Su Qingyu did not have any pressure or killing intent towards Ning. Otherwise, Ning's origin soul might collapse. After Yi Guchen's explanation, Mu Xingzu and Ning also learned about Su Qingyu. They both let down their guard. Yi Guchen, you need to enter the seven-sword ancient tower, Ning suddenly said. Oh, senior, you mean? Yi Guchen paused. The seven-sword ancient tower might have some connection to Sky Mountain, Ning said solemnly. Is the Sword Dynasty also related to Sky Mountain? Yi Guchen was slightly surprised. Yi Guchen knew that Ning had been searching for traces of Sky Mountain, because her former lover was related to Sky Mountain. Moreover, Yi Guchen believed that he and his father were also inextricably linked to Sky Mountain. One mountain, one sea, and one immortal valley. What kind of existences are the three hidden forces? How am I related to Sky Mountain? Yi Guchen murmured to himself. He always felt that the three hidden forces were not that simple. Also, how was the sword sect of the Nantian region related to the three hidden forces? Who was the mysterious hand that grabbed the Celestial Emperor sword in the Tianhuang Plains? Was it Little Fatty's mysterious master, Xing Tianyi, or Yi Tianxing? And why did the 9 immemorial swords that hung in the sky of the 9 regions exist? Yi Guchen felt that the entire Nantian region, and even the 9 regions, hid a huge secret. Of course, with Yi Guchen's current strength, he could not find out too much. His only goal now was to become stronger and participate in the battlefield of prodigies. In the future, he would destroy the Divine Sword Sect, Starry Sword Pavilion, and other forces. I know. If I have the chance to enter the Seven-Sword Ancient Tower, I will definitely find out, Yi Guchen said. He could not think too much now. He could only take one step at a time. Then Mu Xingzu left reluctantly. She knew that Yi Guchen still had to cultivate. Only Yi Guchen was left in the room. It's time to completely control the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. Even if it was only 2 or 3 days, Yi Guchen did not waste any time. He took out the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. Suddenly, there seemed to be a slight explosion in the void. This sword is not bad, Su Qingyu said lightly. Maybe it can be repaired, but it's too difficult to repair a tribulation divine weapon. Yi Guchen shook his head slightly. Although he had inherited the legacy of Forged Sky Edge, it was still too difficult for him to repair the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. Yi Guchen then began to completely blood bond with the quasi-tribulation divine weapon. He dripped a drop of blood essence into the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison, and began to refine it. Vaguely, Yi Guchen seemed to hear 9 dragon roars. The 9-headed dragon demon soul was hidden in the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. Not only that, but a ball of 7-colored lightning shot out from the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison, and entered Yi Guchen's body. 7-colored profound lightning. Yi Guchen's eyes narrowed. 7-colored profound lightning was the fusion of 7 different types of lightning. It was extremely powerful. Even among profound lightning, it was the most powerful and explosive type of lightning. As soon as the 7-colored profound lightning entered Yi Guchen's body, Yi Guchen immediately began to refine it. If it was an ordinary person, the 7-colored profound lightning would have shattered his body as soon as it entered his body. However, Yi Guchen's body was too strong. He immediately used his ancient god body, and began to refine the 7-colored profound lightning. At this time, the 7-colored profound lightning caught the purple lightning, ghastly lightning, and void-level profound lightning, and wrapped them in it. It began to devour and refine them. Could it be that he is about to evolve? Yi Guqin was also surprised. Chapter 923. The heavenly fire and heavenly thunder were magical powers nurtured by heaven and earth. When they collided with each other, unless their powers were equal, the only outcome was to be merged, devoured, and refined. Just like how the heart demon flame had devoured the heavenly sun Xianming fire, the seven-colored dark thunder had also started to merge with the purple lightning ghastly thunder and the extreme void dark thunder. Yi Guqin's body surface was filled with various colors of lightning, supporting Yi Guqin as if he was the Lord of Thunder. His body was once again tempered by the thunder. Yi Guqin, you can take this opportunity to get a preliminary understanding of the lightning sword principle left in this sword. Su Qingyu reminded him. Indeed, the heavenly thunder is merging in my body. I can comprehend the lightning sword essence in the nine-dragon thunder prison at the same time. Yi Guqin's eyes lit up. The merging of the heavenly thunder would help Yi Guqin comprehend the essence of the thunder. He immediately sat cross-legged on the ground, closed his eyes, and started to comprehend. Countless lightning flashed in the nine-dragon thunder prison sword, and the lightning seemed to condense into countless mysterious and profound thunder ancient characters. That was the lightning sword principle that the previous owner of the nine-dragon thunder prison, Lightning Sword Reverend, had comprehended. Yi Guqin immersed his mind and started to comprehend the lightning sword principle. Of course, the lightning sword principle was a peerless sword principle, and it was not easy to comprehend. Moreover, the lightning sword principle was considered to be one of the most powerful sword principles in terms of attacking power. In terms of overbearing destruction and destructive power, it was even more powerful than the Azura sword principle and lifeless sword principle. Yi Guqin did not expect to comprehend it immediately. He only wanted to comprehend it at the beginning. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. The rolling thunder power in Yi Guqin's body finally calmed down. Yi Guqin carefully checked his body. He found that the purple lightning ghastly thunder and the extreme void dark thunder had been completely merged with the seven-colored dark thunder. The seven-colored dark thunder should be called the nine-colored dark thunder. Red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, purple, dark purple, silver. There were a total of 9 colors, which represented the fusion of 9 different types of lightning into one, and the fusion of them into the domineering 9-colored profound lightning. What a powerful heavenly lightning! It is much stronger than the purple void profound lightning formed by the fusion of 2 heavenly lightnings. Yi Guqin was a little surprised. He slowly raised his hand, and the 9-colored profound bombs jumped and shot out from his fingertips. The 9-colored lightning continued to emit explosive sounds. Yi Guqin could sense that the 9-colored profound bomb was far more powerful than the purple void profound bomb. Refining such exotic thunder will make it easier for you to comprehend the lightning sword principle, Su Qingyu said. Although it's helpful, it's not that simple. Yi Guqin shook his head slightly. He had many sword Daos to comprehend now. Although he had comprehended the Azura sword Dao and Edgeless sword Dao, the 5 elemental sword intent was still some distance away from transforming into a sword Dao. He had only begun to comprehend the lightning sword principle. It would take him a lot of time to reach the level of sword intent, not to mention the creation level all creation sword Dao. The all creation sword Dao was even harder to comprehend than the Azura sword Dao, the 5 elemental sword Dao, and the lightning sword Dao combined. As for the more profound selfless sword Dao, Yi Guqin judged that it was definitely beyond the creation level. He had reached a supreme level of existence. There should be many treasured places in Sacred Cliff College and the Sword Dynasty that can help you comprehend the Sword Dao, Su Qingyu said. Yi Guqin nodded in agreement. That was indeed the case. The Sword Dynasty was a country of sword cultivators. How could there not be treasured places that specialized in comprehending the Sword Dao? The Sword Tomb, one of the 4 secret realms of the Sword Dynasty, was a place that specialized in comprehending the Sword Dao. In Sacred Cliff College, there were also places like the Sword Soul Cave where one could comprehend the Sword Dao. When I become a disciple, I'll go to the Sword Soul Cave and other treasured places to take a look, Yi Guqin murmured. At this moment, Mu Xingzu's voice came from outside the door. The admission ceremony was about to begin. Yi Guchen pushed the door open and walked out. Han Lingxian, Kong Kong Yen worried guest, and the others were all there. As for Qin Paisai, Zhuoqiuqing, and the others, they had joined Tianxian College and did not follow Yi Guchen. Please. Su Fan also came and led Yi Guchen and the others to the place where the admission ceremony would be held. The venue was on a spirit mountain in the Divine Cliff Cave. Not long after, Yi Guchen and the other newly admitted disciples were led by Su Fan to the top of the spirit mountain. Looking around, the entire spirit mountain seemed to have been flattened. At this moment, there was a huge crowd of people. They were all Sacred Cliff College disciples who came to watch the ceremony. Except for those disciples who are doing missions outside or cultivating, most of the rest are gathered here, Su Fan said with a smile. Yi Guchen looked around. These Sacred Cliff College disciples were indeed not weak. They were all above the bridge of heaven and earth. Among them, Yi Guchen saw Jiang Yan, who had targeted him that day. On the other side, Ling Mayin, who was wearing a long black dress and had a cold expression, was also there. She looked at Yi Guchen with a cold gaze. Yi Guchen did not care. He looked around again and suddenly saw a disciple with a golden emblem. The disciple with a golden emblem was dressed in white. He was tall and handsome. Standing among the disciples, he was like a crane in a flock of chickens. Who is that disciple with a golden emblem? Yi Guchen asked Su Fan. That person is called Ouyang Tianji. He is ranked 13th on the sword ranking. He is from the Ouyang family. Su Fan's tone became cold. The Ouyang family? Yi Guchen raised his eyebrows. The Sword Alliance has 5 pseudo-saint families. They are the Hua family, the Jiang family, the Yin family, the Shengguan family, and the Ouyang family. Although Ouyang Tianji is not the strongest genius of the Ouyang family, he is very strong, Su Fan said. Yi Guchen nodded slightly. Seemingly sensing Yi Guchen's gaze, Ouyang Tianji turned his face towards Yi Guchen. He glanced at Yi Guchen expressionlessly before withdrawing his gaze. From your tone, it seems that you have something against Ouyang Tianji? Yi Guchen asked Su Fan. He could hear the indifference in Su Fan's tone. Su Fan approached Yi Guchen and said in a low voice, "To tell the truth, Brother Dugu, Jiang Yan and Ouyang Tianji are both geniuses of the aristocratic families. I even suspect that they are spies planted in the academy by the aristocratic families." Yi Guchen nodded. It seemed that the 5 academies were also very complicated. In addition to these people, Yi Guchen also noticed some experts from Sacred Cliff College. Some of the elders who were at the same level as Beixian Elder were around the 3rd heaven of the Venerable Realm. There were also 5 figures sitting high in the air. Yi Guchen also knew about the 5 figures. They were the 5 temple masters of Sacred Cliff College. They were in charge of the Mission Hall, Sword Technique Hall, Elixir Hall, Divine Weapon Hall, and Punishment Hall. The cultivation of each temple master was around the 7th heaven of the Venerable Realm. In Sacred Cliff College, above the temple masters was Elder Ime, and above him was the mysterious dean of the Divine Cliff College. However, Yi Guchen did not see the dean of the Divine Cliff College and Elder Ime. Everyone, the admission ceremony has begun. The disciples who join Sacred Cliff College will be divided into different levels according to the results of the test, Beixian Elder said as he stepped forward. As soon as he finished speaking, the ground on the top of Spirit Mountain suddenly lit up with an array. Then, under Yi Guchen's surprised gaze, the ground began to split from the middle. A majestic array appeared, accompanied by 36 puppets. Chapter 924. Is this an Earth rank array? Yi Guchen glanced around and looked at the 36 puppets. Every single one of the puppets seemed to be made of metal, and they gave off a sense of toughness. The puppets held sharp swords in their hands. At the same time, the 36 puppets were compatible with the array on the ground. They were obviously part of the Earth rank array. However, in Yi Guchen's opinion, this array could barely be considered an Earth rank array. Its power was probably weaker than his 5 Emperor's Cosmos sword array, let alone the 6 Dao Ashura sword array. This is the Tiangang sword puppet array. Although it's only close to an Earth rank array, it's enough to pose a threat to those in the Divine Dwelling stage. The content of this assessment is to break through the Tiangang sword puppet array. Those who can last 15 minutes in the array will be Bronze Emblem disciples. Those who can last for 2 hours will become Silver Emblem disciples. Those who can last for more than 4 hours, or even barely resist the array, will become Gold Emblem disciples. Beixian Elder announced the rules. So I have to break through the Tiangang sword puppet array? Yi Guchen mumbled. Brother Dugu, of course you don't have to. With your talent and strength, you'll undoubtedly become a Silver Emblem disciple. It's not impossible for you to become a Gold Emblem disciple, Su Fan said. Soon the assessment began. The prodigies who had joined Sacred Cliff College began to break through the Tiangang sword puppet array. As soon as they stepped into the range of the array, the 36 sword puppets used the Tiangang sword movement technique and slashed at them together. Such a formation was more than enough to trap even the most ordinary divine-dwelling experts. Not to mention the prodigies who had reached the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. None of the prodigies could achieve good results in the Tiangang sword puppet array. Ji Fan, Bronze Emblem disciple. Zhou Yi, Bronze Emblem disciple. Xinqiu, Bronze Emblem disciple. Beixian Elder read them one by one. His face did not look too good. The Divine Cliff Academy is really getting worse year by year. Jiang Yin muttered to himself in a low voice. As prodigies from aristocratic families, they had no sense of belonging to Sacred Cliff College. On the other hand, Ling Moyin's already cold face seemed to have been sealed in ice. The prodigies recruited by Sacred Cliff College had always been weaker than those recruited by the other 4 colleges. As time passed, no one was able to last more than 2 hours in the Heavenly Dipper Sword Talisman formation. And during this period of time, Yi Guchen was observing the Heavenly Dipper Sword Puppet Grand Array with rapt attention. As long as it was a formation, there would be rules to follow. Although Yi Guchen did not specialize in Array Dao, with the 5 Emperors Qiankuan Sword Array and the 6 Dao Azura Sword Array, he was no stranger to Array Dao. Furthermore, this was considered a sword array. For a sword cultivator like Yi Guchen, understanding it was even easier. Next, Han Lingxian. Beixian Elder announced. Han Lingshuan's delicate body trembled slightly as she bit her lip. She knew her own limits. She knew that with her abilities, she could only be a Bronze Emblem disciple. Just as Han Lingxian was about to enter the array, Yi Guchen's eyes flashed and he said, "Wait." Ha! Han Lingxian stopped in her tracks and looked at Yi Guchen in confusion. Yi Guchen moved closer to Han Lingshuan's ear. Han Lingxian did not know what to do. Her ears turned red and her sparkling earlobes turned pink. When Mu Xingzhu saw this scene, she was slightly surprised and pouted her lips. But she knew that Yi Guchen would not do anything overboard. Beixian Elder, Su Fan, Ling Maoyin, Jiang Yan, Ouyang Tianji, and the others were all stunned when they saw Yi Guchen's actions. What is Dugu Wubai doing? Why is he being intimate with a beauty at this time? Is he teaching her how to break through the array? With Yi Guchen's current reputation, his every move would be scrutinized by everyone. Oh, what a joke. Does he really think that he can help her pass by just giving her some pointers? Jiang Yan was dismissive. Although the Tiangang Sword Talisman array was not comparable to a true Earth-level array, it was not far off. Even a Divine Dwelling Realm expert would find it difficult to break through, let alone Yi Guchen. It's futile. Ouyang Tianji also shook his head. Ling Maoyin looked deeply at Yi Guchen. She also wanted to know how capable this rising sword demon was. If you do this, you should be able to last until the end, Yi Guchen said. I see. Han Lingxian was still in a daze. It was because Yi Guchen had given her some pointers. Han Lingxian immediately had a deeper understanding of the Tiangang Sword Talisman array. Without any hesitation, she immediately stepped into the array. The 36 sword talisman puppets immediately surrounded her and tried to kill her. The sword talisman array contained the positions of the 36 stars of the Tiangang Sword Talisman array, as if it was the orbit of the stars in the sky. Han Lingxian was among them, and she was as agile as a fish in the water. She wasn't trying to break the formation because it was simply impossible for her to do so with her current strength. Han Lingxian only wanted to persevere for 2 hours and become a Silver Emblem disciple. Did the sword demon, Dugu Wubai, really give her pointers? That's impossible. It's the sword demon's first time here. He shouldn't have come into contact with the Tiangang Jiankui array. Han Lingxian, who was only at the 5th level of the Heaven and Earth Spiritual Bridge, had persevered in the array for so long. The entire peak of Spirit Mountain was in an uproar. Beixian Elder was also in a daze. He could not help but look at Yi Guqin. He also did not dare to believe that Yi Guqin could see through the Tiangang Sword Talisman array's trajectory in such a short time and give her pointers. However, Han Lingshuan's performance was an ironclad fact. There must be something fishy. Jiang Yin did not believe it at all. Even if Jiang Fengyan was here, he would not be able to see through the Tiangang Sword Talisman array in such a short time. Under the watchful eyes of many Sacred Cliff College disciples, elders and temple masters, 2 hours passed quietly. Han Lingxian moved back and forth in the sword array. She was already exhausted. Her true qi was depleted, and she was drenched in sweat. With a loud clang, a sword talisman puppet suddenly swung its sword. Han Lingxian could no longer resist, and was directly thrown out of the sword array. Han Lingxian, a silver emblem disciple. Beixian Elder was stunned for a moment before he shouted. No matter what, Han Lingxian had persevered in the array for so long. They could not say that she had cheated. As soon as he said that, a commotion broke out. Han Lingxian looked at Yi Guqin excitedly. There was a big difference between the treatment of a silver emblem disciple and a bronze emblem disciple. Next, there were only 3 people who had not taken the test: Yi Guqin, Kong, and Yin Chou-ku. Kong, Yin Chou-ku, both of you reached the upper level of the Thunder Prison Mountain. Therefore, you don't need to go through the Tiangang Sword Talisman array. You can directly become a silver emblem disciple. As for Yi Guqin, due to your excellent performance in the selection of the 5 academies, 3 brilliant lights, and the 9 Dragon Thunder Prison, you also defeated Hua Xingjie and the others. Therefore, you can directly become a gold emblem disciple. Beixian Elder said loudly. He's a gold emblem disciple. Elder Beixian's words caused another uproar among the crowd. Chapter 925. The disciples of the 5 major colleges were divided into Bronze Emblem, Silver Emblem, Gold Emblem, and Holy Emblem. Needless to say, there were only a handful of Holy Emblem disciples in the 5 major colleges, and the entire Sword Dynasty. One had to pass the 10th level of Mount Saint Crossing in order to obtain the title. Below the Holy Emblem disciples, the Gold Emblem disciples had the highest status. Generally speaking, any new disciple who joined the 5 major colleges would start as a Bronze Emblem disciple. For example, Han Lingxian, Kong, and the others who could directly become Silver Emblem disciples were rare and enviable. As for directly becoming a Gold Emblem disciple, it was even rarer in the past. The last person from Sacred Cliff College to receive this treatment was the Sword Monk Xuanlian. Now, the Sword Monk Xuanlian was also a Holy Emblem disciple. But what was the Sword Monk Xuanlian's level? He was ranked 4th on the sword ranking, and was a Divine Dwelling Realm elite. Yi Guqin's performance throughout his journey had been astonishing. But his current cultivation level was only at the 4th level of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. Even though his combat strength was extraordinary, some of the Gold Emblem disciples of Sacred Cliff College felt that it was unfair. Elder, I think we need to discuss this matter further. If it's so easy to become a Gold Emblem disciple, where do you think we are? Jiang Yin stepped forward and was the first to object. I also think it's inappropriate, Elder. Ouyang Tianji also stood up to object. Elder, we don't know Dugu Wubai's true strength. It's indeed inappropriate to let him become a Gold Emblem disciple, Ling Maoyin said after a slight hesitation. Seeing that the 3 Gold Emblem disciples objected, the surrounding Sacred Cliff College disciples looked at each other. It was rare to see such a situation. Dugu Wubai's performance is enough for him to become a Gold Emblem disciple. This is the college's arrangement. Are you going to object? Beixian Elder's face darkened slightly. It was normal for Jiang Yan and Ouyang Tianji to object. After all, they were prodigies of aristocratic families and were loyal to their families. It was normal for them to object to Yi Guqin. However, Ling Maoyin was a true disciple of Sacred Cliff College. How could she object Yi Guqin? However, Elder Beixian also knew about Ling Maoyin's experience, so he just sighed in his heart. Bei Xian Ouyang Tianji said to say, "Ai," he said to say. Dugu wu bai, he said. Ouyang Tianji smiled. Ouyang Tianji. Ouyang. And Dugu wu bai is it fair for gold emblem disciples like us? He did not object to Yi Guqin as openly as Jiang Yan, but it was even more unbearable. This is not special treatment. This is what Dugu wu bai deserves, Bei Xian elder said loudly. Okay, if that's the case, we won't say anything. Ouyang Tianji did not mind and took a step back. Although the hubbub had been suppressed, there were still many whispers. Some people looked at Yi Guqin, Kong Kong, and the others with doubts. After all, Yi Guqin and the others did not need to break through the array to obtain noble status. This Ouyang Tianji is not simple. Yi Guqin looked at Ouyang Tianji. At this moment, he took a step back in order to advance. He did not argue with Yi Guqin. Instead, it made the Sacred Cliff College disciples question him even more. For the time being, Yi Guqin did not know how strong Ouyang Tianji was. However, he was indeed very shrewd. Okay, then next. Bei Xian elder did not want to delay. At this moment, Yi Guqin said, Bei Xian elder, if that's the case, I would like to try the Big Dipper sword puppet formation. As soon as Yi Guqin finished speaking, the commotion in the surroundings fell silent for a moment. Many of the Divine Cliff Academy's disciples also looked at Yi Guqin in surprise. Clearly, they were somewhat surprised. Ouyang Tianji's lips suddenly curled up. He thought to himself, he took the bait. Young Dugu, you don't have to do this. Bei Xian elder wanted to say something, but stopped. Yi Guqin's strength was indeed not weak in his eyes. However, if he wanted to challenge the Big Dipper sword puppet formation, he could only obtain the identity of a silver emblem disciple at most. As for resisting or even breaking the formation, Bei Xian elder did not even think about it. Even a divine dwelling stage holy emblem disciple like Xuanlian would not be able to break the formation in a short period of time. As for Yi Guqin's previous guidance to Han Lingxian, it only allowed Han Lingxian to last a little longer in the formation. It was still far from breaking the formation. Yi Guqin could only obtain the result of a silver emblem disciple at most. That would be even more unconvincing. It's just a Big Dipper sword puppet formation, Yi Guqin said with a faint smile. After he had completely refined the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison and obtained the 9-colored Profound Bomb, his strength had soared again. The Big Dipper Jiankui formation might not be able to stop him. Shameless boasting. Jiang Yan snorted coldly. Ling Moyin looked at Yi Guqin with a cold gaze. Yi Guqin's arrogance made her feel very disgusted. Dugu wu bai, your talent is indeed outstanding, but your arrogant personality is a waste of your talent. Ling Moyin could not help but say. What right do you have to talk about my master? Mu Xingzu once again turned into a protective demon. Since Brother Dugu wants to challenge the formation, then I will also give it a try, Yin Cho said. I want to go too. Kong Kong echoed. You guys. Sai, just do your best. Bei Xian elder could not stop them. Jiang Yan and Ouyang Tianji looked at Yi Guqin and the others as if they were watching a show. The densely packed academy disciples in the surroundings were also unable to take their eyes off him. Yen Chou was the first to enter the formation. As a prodigy on the sword roll, Yen Chou's strength was indeed extraordinary. His ethereal movement technique, coupled with the Misty Rain illusory sword, allowed him to last for a while in the formation. In the end, Yen Chou lasted for 3 hours and was still a silver emblem disciple. No one objected to this. Yen Chou deserved to be a silver emblem disciple. However, Yen Chou himself did not seem to be satisfied. Kong Kong then made his move. Looking at Kong Kong, who had a strong head and a chubby face and was still a child, the surrounding disciples were speechless. This little monk looks like he's only 11 or 12 years old, but he's already at the 5th stage of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. This little guy is the real genius. Some of the Sacred Cliff College disciples looked at Kong Kong with kindness. Some of the female disciples even wanted to pinch Kong Kong's chubby cheeks. As Yi Guqin's reputation as the sword demon was too well known, Kong Kong did not receive much attention. However, Kong Kong now stood out and had such a cultivation level at such a young age. It was shocking. I heard that Kong Kong seems to be related to Senior Xuanlian, some people whispered. Yi Guqin also gave Kong Kong some pointers. Kong Kong then entered the formation. Humph, what can this little kid do? Jiang Yin shook his head. It was obviously difficult for someone at the 5th stage of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge to last more than 2 hours in the formation. However, to everyone's surprise, Kong Kong was like a little golden Buddha in the formation. His entire body emitted a golden glow. His strength was not much weaker than those 9th stage prodigies. With Yi Guqin's pointers, Kong Kong managed to last more than 4 hours in the formation. In other words, Kong Kong could become a gold emblem disciple. His performance shocked everyone. How come Dugu Wubai is surrounded by such monsters? Some of the disciples were dumbfounded by what they saw. Even the 5 temple masters were slightly tempted. They were prepared to take Kong Kong as their disciple in the future. However, what followed next was the real highlight of the show. The gazes of countless Divine Cliff Academy's disciples and elders fell upon Yi Guqin. The 5 temple masters also looked at Yi Guqin. Could this rising sword demon last more than 2 hours in the Big Dipper sword puppet formation and become a gold emblem disciple? Chapter 926. Many people looked at Yi Guqin curiously. Yi Guqin's performance was even worse than Kong Kong's. The title of sword demon was undoubtedly a joke. Young Master Dugu, be careful, Han Lingxian exhorted. Only those who had personally entered the Big Dipper sword puppet formation knew how difficult it was to break through. Don't worry. Yi Guqin smiled faintly. He had been watching from the sidelines for so long. Even if he did not completely comprehend the formation, he had at least grasped most of it. At the very least, Yi Guqin still had Su Qingyu, the great god, with him. As a heavenly tribulation saint, Su Qingyu could break through the Big Dipper sword puppet formation with just a glance. Of course, Yi Guqin did not ask Su Qingyu before. He had comprehended it on his own. Just as Yi Guqin was about to step into the formation, suddenly Ouyang Tianji opened his mouth and said, "Hold on." Yi Guqin stopped in his tracks. His eyes were deep as he said faintly, "What can I do for you?" Jiang Yan and the others also looked at Ouyang Tianji with slight confusion. They did not understand why Ouyang Tianji stopped Yi Guqin. Haha, since you want to break through the formation, there's no lack of a wager. I don't have anything precious on me. Let's bet with this. Ouyang Tianji's eyes flashed. He turned his wrist and took out a jade bottle. When he opened the jade bottle, a strong surge of spiritual energy gushed out. A jade elixir rose from the jade bottle and floated in the air. This is... The surrounding Sacred Cliff College disciples could feel the medicinal power of the elixir. They could not help but be shocked, and a touch of desire appeared in their eyes. A divine elixir. There was no doubt that the item that Ouyang Tianji said was not precious was a divine elixir. The value of a divine elixir was not inferior to that of a divine elixir. It was even more precious than an ordinary divine elixir. This was because the divine elixir pills were refined from holy herbs and were even more precious. This Ouyang Tianji actually took out a saint elixir pill as the prize. That's right, the elemental spirit barrier breaking pill. This Ouyang Tianji is really going all out. In the sky, a purple-robed woman smiled. She was the hall master of the pellet hall, Dan Xia. I'm afraid that Ouyang Tianji only has one of this kind of medicinal pill. Instead of using it himself, he's actually willing to use it as a wager. It seems that his scheme isn't small. Another black-robed middle-aged man with a temperament as sharp as a sword shook his head. He was the Sword Technique Palace leader, Luofeng. That's a Yuan spirit breakthrough pill. A single pill can increase one's chances of breaking through to the divine dwelling stage by 40%. The surrounding disciples' eyes were filled with longing. As a sacred pill, the Yuan spirit breakthrough pill only had one effect, which was to increase the chances of breaking through to the divine dwelling stage by 40%. Don't think that 40% is nothing. If a 9th-level Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge prodigy had a 50% chance of successfully breaking through to the divine dwelling stage, then after taking the Yuan Spirit Breakthrough Pill, he would have a 90% chance of breaking through. The Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge to the divine dwelling stage was a major hurdle in the cultivation realm, and it was very difficult to break through. One could imagine how precious the Yuan Spirit Breakthrough Pill was. Even Jiang Yan and the other ninth-level heaven and earth spirit bridge prodigies had blazing eyes. Even with the foundation of a false saint family, they couldn't take out much of such a pill. In fact, Ouyang Tianji only had one on him. He originally planned to use it to break through to the divine dwelling stage, but after seeing Yi Guqin, he changed his mind. Yuan spirit breakthrough pill. Yi Guqin murmured in his heart. He also knew how precious this sacred pill was, and it had a fatal attraction to heaven and earth spirit bridge prodigies. It's not a small sum, but unfortunately, I don't have anything precious on me. Yi Guqin smiled faintly. He was telling the truth. Now Yi Guqin couldn't be said to be poor, but he wasn't far from it. It was impossible for Yi Guqin to take out the enlightenment tree as a bet. Oh, Brother Dugu must be joking. Didn't you just get a treasure? Ouyang Tianji smiled faintly. Oh. Yi Guqin's eyes dimmed. Ouyang Tianji's purpose was finally exposed. What he wanted was the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison Sword. He wants to bet the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison Sword. Tisk interesting. How can Dugu Wubai take out the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison Sword? His chances of winning this bet are not high. Hearing Ouyang Tianji's words, the surrounding disciples whispered to each other. Gongzi Dugu, don't be fooled. Han Lingxian urged. This was obviously a trap for Yi Guqin. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Ouyang Tianji wanted Yi Guqin's 9-Dragon Thunder Prison Sword. Mu Xingzu didn't try to persuade Yi Guqin. She knew that Yi Guqin had his own judgment. He actually has such an idea. Jiang Yan's expression was slightly serious. To be honest, he also coveted the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison Sword. After all, it used to be a heavenly tribulation sword. Even if it was damaged now, it was still a top quasi-heavenly tribulation sword. Little friend Dugu, don't be impulsive. Beixian Elder said solemnly. Yi Guqin smiled faintly and shook his head. Seeing Yi Guqin's action, the surrounding disciples booed. Although they knew that Yi Guqin wasn't stupid and would definitely refuse, his attitude was a bit of a coward after all, which was a shame to the name of Sword Demon. Ouyang Tianji's eyes showed a trace of disappointment. He's not stupid. Ling Moyin said lightly. Yi Guqin's lips curled into a faint smile. This Ouyang Tianji was indeed not weak. He reminded him of his former enemy, Zhou Tong. Ouyang Tianji set up a trap, and Yi Guqin fell into it. He would naturally get his wish and obtain the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison Sword. If Yi Guqin refused, it would also suppress the reputation of Sword Demon, and cause Yi Guqin's reputation in Sacred Cliff College to drop. No matter what choice he made, it would be disadvantageous to Yi Guqin. But unfortunately, Ouyang Tianji miscalculated one thing. Yi Guqin's strength was far beyond his imagination. Ouyang Tianji, although this elemental spirit barrier breaking pill is precious, it's a bit of a stretch to exchange for a quasi-heavenly tribulation sword. What's more, the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison Sword was once a real heavenly tribulation sword. Yi Guqin said with a faint smile. Since Ouyang Tianji wanted to scheme against him, Yi Guqin didn't mind collecting more interest. Oh, if you want to bet, I'll take out 10 quasi-holy herbs and 10 quasi-holy pills. Ouyang Tianji's eyes flashed with hidden joy. He thought that Yi Guqin had finally taken the bait. Okay, it's a deal. If I, Dugu Wubai, can't break this array, the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison Sword will belong to you. Yi Guqin said casually. Dugu Wubai, what we want is fairness, not some wager. Take back the wager, said Dugu Wubai. Ling Moyin said. She just hated Yi Guqin's arrogance and expected better from him. She didn't really want to trick Yi Guqin. No need. Yi Guqin waved his hand. Why are you like this? I already said it's a bet you'll lose. You still want to bet? Are you stupid? Ling Moyin reprimanded coldly, looking a bit embarrassed. She had already reminded him in such a way, but Yi Guqin was still so stubborn. How could the Big Dipper sword puppet array be broken by a 4th-stage heaven and earth spiritual bridge cultivator? Looking at Ling Moyin's cold face, Yi Guqin suddenly realized that this woman wasn't bad. She had a sharp tongue but a soft heart. She couldn't bear to see him lose the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. But unfortunately, neither Ling Moyin nor Ouyang Tianji could see through Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin didn't say anything more. Under everyone's gaze, he stepped into the array. Chapter 927. The moment Yi Guqin stepped into the Great Array, the Tiangang sword puppet formation immediately began to operate. 36 sword puppets, in accordance with the trajectory of the Tiangang 36 stars, surrounded Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin's eyes flashed. He did not directly bring out the 9-dragon thunder prison, but made a grabbing motion in the air and condensed his chi into a sword. He wanted to test it first. Clang! Yi Guqin's sword swept out, striking the sword puppet but was unable to push it back. What powerful puppets! The strength of each sword puppet is not weaker than the 9th-level spirit bridge of heaven and earth. In addition, they are as hard as iron and have unparalleled strength. They are stronger than ordinary 9th-level spirit bridge of heaven and earth. If they are supported by the power of the formation, they can indeed encircle the divine dwelling stage and pose a great threat. After a short contact, Yi Guqin instantly measured the power of the Tiangang sword puppet formation. Why didn't Duge Wubai bring out the 9-dragon thunder prison? I'm afraid he hasn't completely refined it. After all, such a powerful divine weapon is not easy to control. Seeing that Yi Guqin had condensed his chi into a sword, many Sacred Cliff College disciples began to discuss spiritedly. Oh! As I expected, it is absolutely impossible for you to completely control the 9-dragon thunder prison in just 3 days. Without the 9-dragon thunder prison, your strength will be greatly reduced. Ouyang Tianji revealed a confident smile. If that's the case, then there should be no suspense. Jiangyan also shook his head. I've already warned him, but he's still like this. Ling Mayin scrunched her brows. She increasingly felt that Yi Guqin's character made her dislike him. In Ling Mayin's eyes, no matter how talented and strong a person was, if his character was so ignorant and arrogant, his future achievements would be very limited. Obviously, in her eyes, Yi Guqin was such an existence. Many Sacred Cliff College disciples looked at Yi Guqin with more and more suspicion. After all, the name of Sword Demon was too well known, and he had created many miracles in the selection of the 5 academies. If Yi Guqin's performance was not up to expectations, it would naturally cause people to feel disappointed. Sigh. Beixian elder sighed deeply. Han Lingxian was also worried for Yi Guqin. Only Mu Xingzu and Kong Kong remained calm. They trusted Yi Guqin very much. Is this all the Sword Demon has? In the sky, some of the palace masters were surprised. Let's keep watching. Is he really that simple? Sword Technique Palace leader Luo Feng said lightly. As time passed, in the eyes of outsiders, Yi Guqin seemed to have fallen into a dangerous situation, and was being completely suppressed by the sword puppet. Are you all waiting to see me make a fool of myself? Yi Guqin could feel the gazes from all around him. However, what they did not know was that Yi Guqin was not simply being suppressed. He was trying to figure out the Big Dipper blade puppet formation. Do you need help? Su Qingyu's voice sounded in Yi Guqin's mind. Su Qingyu's one sentence was enough to break the formation. It's just a formation. I don't need Senior Su's help. Yi Guqin laughed in his heart. At this time, the surrounding sword puppets had already surrounded Yi Guqin. 6 sword puppets held their swords and slashed down at the same time. The strong sword wind swept over. Most importantly, it had completely sealed off Yi Guqin's surroundings, making it difficult for him to escape. Is it over? The surrounding people focused their gazes. The longer the battle dragged on, the more powerful the Big Dipper blade puppet formation became. And now, the power of the formation had reached its peak. The 6 swords attacked Yi Guqin together. At this critical moment, Yi Guqin's figure suddenly became blurry, like a flower in the mirror or the moon in the water. Wave-like subtle steps was executed. If so close, yet worlds apart was extremely fast. Then wave-like subtle steps was a wonderful and strange movement technique. Yi Guqin's figure became blurry in an instant, and he actually flashed out of the encirclement of the 6 sword puppets. What kind of movement technique is that? Some Sacred Cliff College disciples were stunned. Yi Guqin's figure flashed out of the gap between the swords. They had never seen such a movement technique before. But what was really shocking was not just that. Yi Guqin's eyes flashed with lightning. With a flip of his wrist, there was a thunderous explosion as well as 9 dragon roars. A divine weapon that shone with peerless sharpness appeared in the world, flickering with lightning. It was the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison. That Dugawubai has summoned the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison. Could it be that he? Seeing Yi Guqin summon the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison, even some elders were shocked. A quasi-tribulation divine weapon was not something that could be completely controlled in a short period of time. Yi Guqin swung his sword, and the blazing sword light turned into waves of lightning ripples, and crashed into the 6 sword puppets. Boom! In the violent and ear-piercing explosion, the 6 sword puppets were directly blown back. Not only that, but their chests, which were as hard as metal, also had pitch-black lightning burn marks on them. Yi Guqin's sword had blown back 6 sword puppets at the 9th level of the spirit bridge of heaven and earth. This scene silenced everyone in the surroundings. Those questioning gazes were almost frozen at this moment. Ouyang Tianji's face changed for the first time. He faintly felt that he seemed to have missed something. How could it be? You have completely refined the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison, and can fully display its power? Jiang Yan exclaimed in disbelief. The Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison was extremely powerful, and could not be refined in a short period of time. But how could they know that Yi Guqin had the God-devouring demon sword, and the Thunder Calamity sword, which were even more powerful than the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison? It's just a quasi-tribulation divine weapon. Yi Guqin's lips curved into a cold smile. He could release such power without using any sword moves, and it was all because of the power of the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison. But in this short 3-day seclusion, Yi Guqin's harvest was not only the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison. Whoosh! On the other side, the rest of the sword puppets also surrounded and attacked. Yi Guqin raised his hand, and a terrifying 9-colored lightning appeared. It suddenly burst out, turning into a blazing lightning tide, and swept towards the sword puppets. That's the 7-colored profound bomb. No, it feels even more powerful. Beixian Elder's eyes narrowed. Many people knew that there was an extremely explosive 7-colored profound bomb in the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison, but they did not expect that Yi Guqin had also refined the 7-colored profound bomb, and it seemed to be even more powerful. Rumble! Thunder roared and lightning flashed. Yi Guqin was like the king of thunder. With the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison in his hand, he swept in all directions. Thunder Dragon Purgatory. Yi Guqin shook the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison sword, and a Thunder Flood Dragon Demon Soul rushed out, turning into a lightning prison, and trapped more than 10 sword puppets. He immediately attacked the other sword puppets. As long as the trajectory of the Celestial Dipper was destroyed, the Celestial Dipper sword puppet formation would be easy to break. 3 Ultimate Holy Swords Starbreaker Sword. Yi Guqin turned the tip of his sword, and the power of thunder and lightning spread out, as if it was sweeping through the galaxy. However, Yi Guqin did not stop there. Instead, he performed the second move. 3 Ultimate Holy Swords Kuan Moon Sword. Dual Swords Combine, Star and Moon Reversal. Yi Guqin shouted coldly, and the Starbreaker Sword and Kuan Moon Sword of the 3 Ultimate Holy Swords merged into one, turning into an even more powerful move. Star and Moon Reversal. Chapter 928. The power of the 3 Ultimates Holy Swords was not to be underestimated. At this moment, the combination of the Star-Shattering Sword and the Moon Sword was even more frightening. Even the faint trace of contempt in the eyes of Ouyang Tianji, Jiang Yan and the rest had quietly disappeared. That's a combination technique. Han Lingxian was shocked. She also had the cultivation method of the 3 Ultimates Holy Swords, but she had only reached the Moon Sword. Yi Guqin, on the other hand, could even perform the combination technique. The gap between people was really huge. I'm not weak in terms of talent in the Sword Dao, but compared to young Master Dugu, it's like comparing a firefly to the moon. Han Lingxian muttered in disappointment. At this moment, Yi Guqin was the center of everyone's attention. When he performed the combination technique, a sword light shot up into the sky and a beautiful moon accompanied by twinkling stars appeared. Stars and moon appeared at the same time. Sword energy filled the sky. A powerful move, coupled with the support of the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison, the power that erupted was extremely strong. When the stars and moon swept out, The void rumbled, and more than 10 sword puppets were swept away. Yi Guchen turned around once again, and similarly slashed out with his sword, slashing towards the sword puppet that was trapped in the Thunder Dragon Purgatory. Rumble! The sword puppets, which were already defeated by the power of the lightning, were sent flying again and again. Everyone on the peak of Spirit Mountain was silent. Yi Guchen's performance had far exceeded their expectations. Most of the sword puppets collapsed on the ground, their power flowing out, and they lost their ability to move. The sword puppet's power came from the formation. Yi Guchen had seen through the formation's trajectory, so it was easy for him to break it. Break! Yi Guchen shouted coldly, and 9-colored profound lightning wrapped around the 9-dragon thunder prison sword. Violent lightning swept out in all directions, making crackling sounds. Whoosh! The sword light merged with the lightning and swept out in all directions, completely destroying all the sword puppets. The entire Big Dipper sword puppet formation was broken. Silence. All the Sacred Cliff College disciples present seemed to have been petrified. Some disciples took a deep breath, unable to suppress the indescribable shock in their hearts. The Big Dipper sword puppet formation, which could even trap a divine dwelling stage expert for a short period of time, had been broken by Yi Guchen. Why is it like this? Ouyang Tianji was completely dumbfounded. He had never expected that Yi Guchen would have such a monstrous talent and strength to be able to break such a great formation. This kid is a freak. Beixian Elder couldn't help but curse. Jiang Yan's body trembled slightly, and he looked at Yi Guchen with even more fear. Ling Moyin's jade-like face also stiffened. At this moment, Yi Guchen's behavior was a form of mockery to her. Even with Ling Moyin's cold personality, she couldn't help but have an unnatural expression on her face. In the sky, Luo Feng of the Swordsmanship Hall laughed. Haha, this kid is somewhat to my liking. Danxia Hallmaster of the Elixir Hall smiled. Hallmaster Luo Feng, although your path of the sword is strong, we aren't weak either. I might have to fight for it. Although the various Hall Masters had different positions, most of them cultivated the path of the sword. After all, this was the Sword Dynasty. Danxia Hall Master's attainments in the sword weren't inferior to her attainments in the path of the alchemy. The other 3 Hall Masters also refused to give in. But below, Yi Guchen's expression was indifferent. He swept a glance at Ouyang Tianji, Jiang Yan, and the others and said, "Are you satisfied now?" This question made Jiang Yan, Ouyang Tianji, and Ling Moyin's expressions extremely unnatural. Especially Jiang Yan and Ouyang Tianji. They had previously vowed that Yi Guchen didn't have the strength to become a gold emblem disciple. But now, the Heavenly Dipper Sword Talisman Grand Formation that was covered in desolation had undoubtedly slapped them fiercely in the face. Sword Demon is indeed Sword Demon. Senior Jiang Yan and the others probably didn't expect this. Hearing the discussions around, Jiang Yan's face turned even paler. Yi Guchen ignored them and looked at Ouyang Tianji. Isn't it time to fulfill your promise? This. Ouyang Tianji's expression froze. 10 sage to be herbs and 10 sage to be pills. Even with his identity as the heir of the Ouyang family, it was painful. Not to mention the elemental spirit barrier breaking pill. This saint pill was originally used by Ouyang Tianji for his own breakthrough. But because of a moment of greed, he wanted to get Yi Guchen's 9-dragon thunder prison, so he took it out as a bet. In the end, he suffered a double loss. As the prodigy of the Ouyang family, you won't go back on your words, right? Yi Guchen said indifferently. You. Ouyang Tianji took a deep breath, his chest heaving up and down. Ouyang Tianji, this bet is witnessed by everyone, Beixian Elder said indifferently. He didn't like these prodigies, but they joined openly, and with their background, Sacred Cliff College couldn't reject them. Of course I won't go back on my words. Here you go. Ouyang Tianji took a deep breath and handed everything to Yi Guchen. He looked calm, but the veins on his temples were slightly protruding. Obviously, he wasn't as relaxed as he looked. Thank you. I just happened to be lacking some resources. Yi Guchen took it and smiled faintly. Cough. Ouyang Tianji's body shook, and a muffled groan came from his chest. Yi Guchen's words were like a stab to the heart. Every dog has its day. Ouyang Tianji's clenched fists trembled slightly. He flung his sleeves, not wanting to stay any longer, and left directly. It was just that his back looked a little disheveled. Jiang Yan didn't leave, but his face didn't look too good. Ling Maoyin looked at Yi Guqin, sizing him up. She found that Yi Guqin didn't seem to be completely arrogant. Many of the disciples present looked at the resources in Yi Guqin's hands with desire and passion. The most coveted was naturally the elemental spirit barrier breaking pill. Yi Guqin put the quasi-sage elixir and quasi-sage pill into his origin ring. As for the elemental spirit barrier breaking pill, Yi Guqin glanced at it and directly handed it to Mu Xingzu. Master. Seeing Yi Guqin stuffing the jade bottle into her hand, Mu Xingzu was still in a daze. All the Sacred Cliff College disciples around, including Jiang Yan and Ling Maoyin, were completely stunned. Yi Guqin actually gave such a precious elemental spirit barrier breaking pill to someone else? Your cultivation has reached the bottleneck of the peak of the 9th stage of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge, right? With this pill, you are almost 100% sure that you can break through. Yi Guqin smiled faintly. Master, how can this be? This is such a precious saint elixir. How can Xingzhu? Mu Xingzu's pretty face changed, and she hurriedly handed the jade bottle over. This wasn't just a saint elixir, it was a saint elixir that could break through the bottleneck of the realm. If it were an ordinary person, they wouldn't wait to snatch it. Even if they were brothers or friends, they might turn against each other because of this pill. I'm not in a hurry for the time being. You can use this pill. Besides, Yi Guqin paused for a moment, then continued. If it's just to break through to the divine dwelling stage, the elemental spirit barrier breaking pill doesn't matter much to me. Yi Guqin's indifferent words spread across the entire spirit mountain. All the Sacred Cliff College disciples fell silent. There was no lack of envy and jealousy in their eyes. Those with monstrous talent could be so willful. Chapter 929. Yi Guqin's words made all the Sacred Cliff College disciples roll their eyes. Even the 5 hall masters in the sky were a little stunned. This little guy is indeed interesting. Danxia Palace Master covered her mouth and laughed. It had been a long time since such a prodigy appeared in Sacred Cliff College. Luofeng of the Sword Technique Palace Master's eyes flashed. He seemed to have made up his mind. Now the admission ceremony was finally over. Yi Guqin's performance shocked all the Sacred Cliff College disciples. No one would ever think that Yi Guqin's title as the Sword Devil was just an empty title. Okay, next is the badge awarding ceremony. Beixian Elder said. This time, Yi Guqin and Kong Kong both received the identity of a golden badge disciple. It was rare to see such a thing in the past admission ceremonies. Yi Guqin took the golden badge, looked at it, and kept it in his origin ring. Seeing Yi Guqin's action, the surrounding Sacred Cliff College disciples were stunned. After all, most of these disciples were around 20 years old. It was the age to show off their talents. After receiving the golden badge, they would pin it on their chest, showing that they were different from others at all times. However, Yi Guqin didn't care and kept it. Many people were surprised by his actions. Not arrogant, not impatient, not seeking an undeserved reputation. Palace Master Luofeng muttered to himself. Yi Guqin had almost all the qualities of a swordsman. Other than being a little arrogant, Luofeng was very satisfied with Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin's action made Ling Maoyin and Jiang Yan feel uncomfortable. Their badges were worn on their chests at all times. Kong Kong, on the other hand, happily put the golden badge on. After all, he was still a child. Alright, you are now officially Sacred Cliff College's Gold Emblem disciples. Don't think that being a Gold Emblem disciple is only a status symbol. I'll ask Su Fan to bring you to receive the benefits of being a Golden Emblem disciple later, Beixian Elder said with a smile. Thank you, Elder. Yi Guqin nodded. This was what he cared about the most. After that, Yan Worried Guest, Han Lingxian and the others also received silver badges, while the rest received bronze badges. The admission ceremony was finally over. At this moment, Palace Master Luofeng, who was in the sky, said, Dugawubai, are you willing to become my disciple? As soon as these words were spoken, the surroundings fell silent. Many disciples were surprised. Generally speaking, the new disciples that entered the academy would mostly be chosen by some elder-level figures. As for the 5 palace masters, they were only here to observe the ceremony. Unless they were truly monstrous geniuses, they would not take the initiative to recruit disciples. However, on second thought, with Yi Guqin's performance, it seemed to be reasonable. I also want such a disciple. Dugu Wubai, are you willing to become my disciple? I don't only know how to make pills, Danxia Palace Master said with a smile. Dugu Wubai, if you become my disciple, you will have a better future. Aren't you going to challenge the sacred mountain in 3 months? During this time, I will do my best to teach you. The other 3 palace masters also spoke at the same time. Looking at Yi Guqin, who was being fought over by the 5 palace masters, the jaws of all the disciples dropped to the ground. Sometimes, the gap between people was just that big. Looking at the 5 palace masters, if it were an ordinary disciple, they might be overjoyed. However, for Yi Guqin, acknowledging a master was indeed a little redundant. Yi Guqin saluted the 5 palace masters and said in a sincere tone, "Thank you for your appreciation, palace masters, but I have no intention of acknowledging a master." In the sky, the expressions of the 5 palace masters froze. Not only that, but the noise of the crowd also came to an abrupt end. What did they just hear? Yi Guqin actually rejected the invitation of a palace master? The 5 palace masters were the strongest people in the entire Sacred Cliff College. Other than the dean and great elder Yi Mei, only gold emblem disciples were qualified to be apprenticed to a palace master. Little friend Dugu, don't speak nonsense. Even Bei Xian elder reminded him softly. Most people came to the academy for one of 2 reasons. One was to obtain cultivation resources and treasures. The second was to be taught by a famous master. With the experience and strength of the 5 palace masters, it was more than enough to teach gold emblem disciples. Dugu Wubai, I know your strength, and I also understand that a swordsman should have pride and sharpness. However, if you refuse to acknowledge a master because of this, then you are a little foolish. Palace Master Luo Feng frowned slightly. He indeed admired Yi Guqin's character, talent and strength. However, if Yi Guqin was arrogant to this extent, then it would be a little unpleasant. Yi Guqin was also helpless. Not to mention that until now he only acknowledged one master in his heart, and that was Feng Manlu. He had his own understanding of the path of the sword, and he would walk his own path of the sword. Rashly acknowledging a master wasn't a good thing for Yi Guqin. Furthermore, Yi Guqin still had Su Qingyu in his body. Wouldn't a heaven's trial saint be more able to teach Yi Guqin than these palace masters who were at the night level? Therefore, Yi Guqin refused. Thank you for your appreciation, palace master. However, I really don't have the intention to acknowledge a master. Yi Guqin cupped his hands again. There wasn't any arrogance in his words. They were very peaceful and sincere. However, in the eyes of outsiders, Yi Guqin's actions were still arrogant. Dugu Wubai, that's enough. Ling Moyin couldn't help but tremble with anger. Yi Guqin was surprised. How did he provoke Ling Moyin again? Palace Master Luofeng is also senior sister Ling's master. Su Fan reminded him in a low voice. I see. Yi Guqin understood. Ling Moyin was Palace Master Luofeng's disciple, and he had rejected Palace Master Luofeng, so Ling Moyin was definitely unhappy. Dugu Wubai, your arrogance is really disgusting. If you don't have master's guidance, you won't have a chance to pass the Saint Mountain in 3 months. Ling Moyin was a little exasperated at his failure to live up to her expectations. Yi Guqin was silent, shaking his head. Gee, how ignorant. Without anyone to guide you, I'll see what you have to pass the Saint Mountain in 3 months. Jiang Yan's expression returned to normal, looking like he was enjoying the show. Since that's the case, all right then. Luofeng looked indifferently at Yi Guqin. He wasn't going to argue with a gold emblem disciple. However, it was obvious that he wouldn't have a good impression of Yi Guqin either. Danxia Palace Master, and the others shook their heads in pity. Yi Guqin was a rare gem. However, he was too arrogant. What about you, punk? Danxia Palace Master looked at Kong Kong. With Kong Kong's age, the strength he displayed was definitely monstrous. Kong Kong is willing to become Danxia Palace Master's disciple. Kong Kong said without hesitation. Oh, Danxia Palace Master was surprised. Kong Kong actually agreed so easily. The other 4 Palace Masters were also surprised. Because Sister Danxia is very pretty. Kong Kong's face was slightly red as he twisted his fingers in embarrassment. All the Sacred Cliff College disciples' jaws dropped to the ground, daring to tease the Palace Master. This little monk had a bright future. Chapter 930. Hee hee, what an interesting little guy. None of you can compete with me. In the sky, Danxia Temple Mistress giggled when she saw this. She was dressed in a purple robe, with a graceful temperament and a beautiful face. Although she was not as enchanting as Wu Hongyan, she had her own unique charm. Kong Kong's words, if it were any other man, would definitely be offensive. However, Kong Kong was only 11 or 12 years old. He was chubby and somewhat cute, so when he said this, it made Danxia Temple Mistress even more amused. After that, Han Lingxian, Yin Chouke, and the others also chose their own masters. As for the remaining Bronze Emblem disciples, they would also be guided by elders. In short, in this batch of disciples, only Yi Guqin was alone and did not have a master. Dugu Wu Bai, in 3 months, I'd like to see how you will perform. Luo Feng Palace Master said. His voice was neither sad nor happy. Although he would not argue with Yi Guqin, he still had a barrier in his heart. I'm also very curious. Danxia Temple Mistress said lightly. Although Yi Guqin could not be said to have offended the 5 temple mistresses, he obviously left a very bad impression. Yi Guqin did not explain anything. Anyway, everything would be clear in 3 months. Just as all the disciples and elders were about to leave, suddenly, there was a burst of laughter. Congratulations to Sacred Cliff College. Hearing this voice, many elders and disciples who were about to leave stopped in their tracks. Everyone was surprised and looked at the source of the voice. When Yi Guqin heard this voice, his eyes suddenly moved and he also looked over. A masked figure with an elegant temperament stepped through the air and arrived. This person was not just anyone, but Yi Guqin's old acquaintance. Kenpo. It's Kenpo. Yi Guqin said to himself. He originally planned to find Kenpo after he had a firm foothold in Sacred Cliff College. He did not expect Kenpo to arrive first. So it's the Sword Son. Beixian Elder smiled faintly. Kenpo was the Sword Son of the Loose Cultivators, so he had a good relationship with Sacred Cliff College. Greetings, Your Highness Kenpo. The Sacred Cliff College disciples cupped their fists slightly. The status of a Sword Son was comparable to that of a prince of a country. These temple masters and elders didn't need to bow, but the disciples of Sacred Cliff College still had to bow. Luo Feng smiled and asked, I don't know what the congratulations are about, Sword Son. Of course it's to congratulate Sacred Cliff College for producing another prodigy on the sword roll. Kenpo said as he looked at Yi Guqin. Prodigy of the sword roll, could it be? Beixian Elder suddenly looked at Yi Guqin. Everyone's eyes were also focused on Yi Guqin. In fact, they all knew that with Yi Guqin's strength, there was no doubt that he would be on the sword roll. The only suspense was Yi Guqin's ranking. The sword roll was a list issued by the Sword Dao Alliance, and it would change in real time. However, generally speaking, the top positions rarely changed. Kenpo smiled faintly and said, I'm sure everyone knows that this prodigy on the sword roll is Dugu Wu Bai. As for his ranking, Kenpo paused, and everyone present pricked up their ears. 10th on the sword roll. Kenpo's voice spread, and the world fell silent for a moment before a huge uproar broke out. What, he actually entered the top 10 on the sword roll? Tisk tsk, it's his first time on the sword roll, and he's already ranked 10th. Many disciples whispered to each other, clearly surprised by Yi Guqin's ranking. He's ranked 10th on the sword roll. Ling Mayin clenched her fists tightly, and bit her lips with an extremely complicated expression. This was because her brother Ling Emoshu had once been ranked 10th on the sword roll. Jiang Yin shook his head and shouted, No, that's impossible. Dugu Wu Bai's strength hasn't reached the Divine Dwelling stage, and he hasn't fought with any Divine Dwelling stage heaven prides. What qualifications does he have to be in the top 10? Yi Guqin's ranking on the sword roll had suddenly surpassed him. Jiang Yin couldn't accept this. Are you questioning the prestige of the Sword Dao Alliance? Kempo glanced at Jiang Yan. No. No. Jiang Yan's voice lowered, but his eyes were filled with a strong unwillingness. However, his words had indeed caused some controversy. Yi Guqin's performance in the 5 academies selection was unquestionable. But even Hua Xingjie was only ranked 19th on the sword roll. Although Yi Guqin had defeated a group of heaven prides, he hadn't fought with any divine dwelling stage heaven prides. His strength was naturally doubtful. Congratulations, Brother Dugu. Kempo gave a cupped fist salute to Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin smiled faintly. They were both well aware of each other's intentions. Some of the disciples' eyes were filled with disbelief when they saw that Saber 9 was being so courteous to Yi Guqin. But on second thought, the top 10 heaven prides on the sword roll weren't inferior to the 13 sword princes in terms of strength. I wonder if I can have a chat with Brother Dugu? Kempo asked with a smile. I couldn't ask for more. Yi Guqin also smiled. Yi Guqin then excused himself and left with Kempo and the others. The entire admission ceremony was completely over, and the crowd dispersed. But it was obvious that the news of Yi Guqin being in the top 10 of the sword roll would soon spread throughout the sword dynasty. The name of the sword devil would climb to another peak. Sai little friend Dugu has created miracles time and time again. I wonder if he will be able to create a real miracle in 3 months. Beixian elder sighed inwardly. He knew that no matter how glorious Yi Guqin was now, if he failed to pass the sacred mountain in 3 months, then all of his reputation would be completely destroyed. As the saying goes, the higher you stand, the harder you fall. As for Jiang Yan, he was naturally waiting for Yi Guqin's failure in 3 months. After Yi Guqin completely obtained the identity of a golden emblem disciple, his residence was also confirmed. The residence of a golden emblem disciple was a superior cave residence in the Divine Cliff Utopia. The spiritual energy in the Divine Cliff Utopia was already shocking enough. It was at least 5 times more than the outside world. The spiritual energy in the superior cave residence was more than 10 times more than the outside world. It was extremely helpful for Yi Guqin's true qi cultivation. Under Su Fan's lead, Yi Guqin also arrived at his own cave residence. Mu Xingzu and the others did not disturb Yi Guqin. In an instant, only Yi Guqin and Kempo were left in the cave residence. Should I call you Brother Dugu or Brother Yi? Kempo said with a smile. Brother Kempo, how have you been? Yi Guqin also smiled warmly. After going through so much, it was the most emotional to see an old friend. After the 5 academies selection, when I heard the news and saw the Sword Sun token, I immediately concluded that it might be you. However, I still didn't dare to confirm it. After all, you took the 9 deaths without regrets pill. Kempo sighed. Perhaps the heavens don't want me to die, and want me to take revenge. Yi Guqin did not explain further. Kempo's expression turned serious. Brother Yi, your enemies are the overlords. They are indeed powerful and terrifying. The most important thing for you now is to become stronger. That's right. I naturally have a plan to become the Sword Sun, and participate in the Prodigy battlefield. Yi Guqin's eyes lit up. Brother Yi, Kempo has a presumptuous request. I hope you will agree to it. Kempo's tone suddenly turned serious as he cupped his hands solemnly at Yi Guqin. Oh, what is it? Just say it. Yi Guqin also said solemnly. Become the Jiankui and save the Sword Dynasty. Kempo said in a deep voice. Chapter 931. Become Jiankui and save the Sword Dynasty? Yi Guqin was a little confused. He shook his head and laughed. Brother Kempo must be joking. What ability do I have to save the Sword Dynasty? Not to mention that Yi Guqin only had the strength of the World Spirit Bridge. Even if he broke through to the Divine Dwelling stage, he still wouldn't be able to reach the apex of the Sword Dynasty. It was a little exaggerated to say that Yi Guqin alone could save the Sword Dynasty. Saber 9 sighed deeply and said, Brother Yi, I'm sure you've noticed it as well. Although the Sword Dynasty appears to be calm on the surface, there's an undercurrent surging beneath the surface. In reality, Lord Chief has already entered the Skyless Sword Realm for 5 years, and has yet to return. The Skyless Sword Realm, one of the 4 great secret domains of the Sword Dynasty? Yi Guchen raised his brows. Yes, the Skyless Sword Realm is the most mysterious of the 4 great secret domains. It is said that this secret domain was left behind by the 7th generation Sword Master, Wu Ming, Kempo said. The 7th generation Sword Master. Yi Guchen's eyes narrowed. He didn't expect to find traces of the 7th generation Sword Master in the Sword Dynasty. Yi Guchen didn't know much about the 7th generation Sword Master. But Yi Guchen had seen the 7th generation Sword Master's ultimate technique, the Sacred Sword of the Universe, on the sword-seeking steel of the Saint Yuan Dynasty. Yi Guchen was a little curious about the 7th generation Sword Master, who had chosen Yi Tianxing. But after hearing Kempo's words, Yi Guchen's brows tightened. You mean the Alliance Master of the Sword Dao Alliance? Yes, the Alliance Master of the Sword Dao Alliance, the name of the proud divine continent. I believe you have heard of it. Kempo couldn't hide the admiration in his voice. Yi Guchen couldn't help but sigh. Facing the cold sword of the heavens alone. Why should I be ashamed of being a hero? The proud divine continent, I have long heard of him. The leader of the Sword Dao Alliance was simply too famous. As the leader of the 100 great dynasties, the leader of the Sword Dynasty, the strength of the proud divine continent, although the strength of a false saint, but even the real heavenly tribulation saints, dare not underestimate him. The proud divine continent even had an astonishing battle record of fighting against 4 great false saints. Alone facing the heavens with a cold sword, why should I be ashamed of being a hero? This poem is the best portrayal of the proud divine continent. 5 years ago, in order to find an opportunity to break through to the heavenly tribulation saint realm, the Alliance Master directly entered the heavenless sword realm. In the following 5 years he never came out. The Vice Alliance Master relied on the heavens to announce that the Alliance Master was cultivating in seclusion. But now, I'm afraid there are many rumors. Kempo's face was full of worry. Heavenly love. Yi Guchen's eyes flashed. Yi Guchen had heard of the Sword Sovereign Yi Tianqing, the Deputy Alliance Leader of the Sword Dao Alliance. Previously, when Wu Hongyan said that the person she liked was the Sword Sovereign, she was referring to Yi Tianqing. What does the so-called Jiankui battle have to do with saving the Sword Dynasty? Yi Guchen asked. Brother Yi, you may not know, but this time the Jiankui is a member of the aristocratic family camp, and his identity is very mysterious. Outsiders do not know who his true identity is, but there is no doubt that if the Alliance Master still does not appear, the Hua family and other forces will not sit still, and will support the Jiankui to take the position. Kempo said solemnly. Yi Guchen nodded slightly, understanding. To put it simply, the proud divine continent had disappeared in the heavenless sword realm for 5 years. The Hua family and other false saint aristocratic families would not sit idly by, and may use the excuse of supporting the Jiankui to control the Sword Dynasty. Kempo and the others were not strong enough to compete with the mysterious Jiankui. If the Sky Pride of the Rogue Cultivator camp did not win the position of Jiankui in this battle, then the Hua family and other aristocratic families could use the Jiankui to take the position. Even so, Brother Kempo, why do you think that I can win the position of Jiankui? Yi Guchen could not help but ask. Someone who can compete with Gu Xiaoyang and Di Haotian, and who has no fear in the face of overlords, to win the position of Jiankui shouldn't be that difficult, right? Kempo said. You think too highly of me, Brother Kempo. However, my goal is the battlefield of Sky Prides. I have no intention of getting involved in the struggle of the Sword Dynasty. Yi Guchen hesitated for a moment, then said. Kempo sighed and said, I don't want to trouble you, Brother Yi, but this matter may affect the stability of the Sword Dynasty. Right now, the Sword Dynasty is in chaos internally, and the other dynasties are eyeing it covetously. It's really dangerous. Yi Guchen frowned slightly. He did not expect the Sword Dynasty to be in such a bad situation. For some reason, he suddenly remembered the words of the crippled old man in Thunder City. He said that the Sword Dynasty was about to be plunged into chaos and the waters were very deep. Should he get involved, or should he choose to ignore it? Yi Guchen pondered for a moment. Brother Yi, I don't ask for anything else. When the time comes, our rogue cultivator camp will act. If we still can't get the position of Jiankui, then please help us, Brother Yi. How about it? Kimpo said sincerely. All right. Yi Guchen sighed. Kimpo had helped him before, so Yi Guchen really couldn't refuse. Then thank you, Brother Yi. Don't worry, if Brother Yi gets the position of Jiankui, there will be a lot of benefits. In the future, you may even become the ruler of the Sword Dynasty. Kimpo was overjoyed. Yi Guchen smiled but did not say anything. He did not have any ambition to become the ruler of the Sword Dynasty. After another round of discussion, Yi Guchen had a better understanding of the Sword Dynasty's situation. Then Kimpo left. Looks like I have to work hard on my cultivation. Yi Guchen thought to himself. There was a sense of urgency in his heart. Breaking through the sacred mountain, seizing the position of Jiankui, and even participating in the prodigy battlefield required his own strength. Fortunately, I've joined the academy and can cultivate in peace. Yi Guchen murmured. Senior Brother Dugu, your cultivation resources are here. Su Fan's voice came from outside the cave. After Yi Guchen officially became a gold emblem disciple, Su Fan also called him senior brother. Come in, Yi Guchen said. Su Fan entered the cave and handed a vitality ring to Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen also revealed a look of surprise on his face after a thorough investigation. There were a total of 15 quasi-sage pills, 20 quasi-sage herbs, and some supreme-grade mystical weapon-level swords and armors. There was also a low-grade royal sword technique, divine sword lightning controlling technique. They must have taken into account that Yi Guchen had the 9 Dragon Thunder Prison. In addition, there were a total of 300,000 heaven crystals, which was equivalent to 30 million crystal jades. This number made Yi Guchen speechless. It should be said that Yi Guchen only obtained 1 million heaven crystals when he plundered the Sovereign Cave. Sacred Cliff College gave him 300,000 heaven crystals at once. Is this the treatment of a gold emblem disciple? Yi Guchen couldn't help but sigh. He finally understood why Jiang Yan and the others were so jealous after knowing that he could directly become a gold emblem disciple. If it were any other normal person, they would probably be envious as well. Senior Brother Dugu, not only that, you can also go to the Spirit Gathering Pavilion and the Sword Spirit Cave to cultivate for 10 days every month. After breaking through to the Divine Dwelling stage, you can even enter the Divine Dwelling Elixir Pool to cultivate, Su Fan said enviously. Not to mention the Divine Dwelling Elixir Pool, the Spirit Gathering Pavilion, and the Sword Spirit Cave were treasured places that all Sacred Cliff College disciples yearned for. But for Bronze Emblem and Silver Emblem disciples, they had to complete missions to enter these 2 treasured places. It was different for Gold Emblem disciples. They had 10 days of free cultivation every month. Chapter 932. Su Fan had already explained to Yi Guchen the use of the Spirit Gathering Pavilion and the Sword Soul Cave. Therefore, Yi Guchen was well aware of the value of this privilege. What made Yi Guchen frown was that what he needed the most now was to recover his knowledge C. To recover his knowledge C, he needed soul crystals or sacred herbs that could nourish the soul. Yi Guchen hesitated for a while, but still decided to ask. I've never heard of soul crystals, but there are a few sacred herbs that can nourish the soul in the college, but they are very precious, Su Fan said. Quasi-sacred herbs and sacred herbs seem to only differ by one word, but their value was worlds apart. Sacred Cliff College could easily give Yi Guchen 15 quasi-sacred herbs, but it was impossible for them to give Yi Guchen a sacred herb directly. Perhaps only the disciples of the Holy Emblem were qualified to get sacred herbs for free. Then how can I get sacred herbs? Yi Guchen was not disappointed and continued to ask. If you want to get sacred herbs, I'm afraid you have to do missions, Su Fan said. The 5 major colleges of the Sword Dynasty did not cultivate flowers in a greenhouse. Every student of the college would participate in various missions and experience real life and death battles. This was also why the Sword Dynasty could produce so many prodigies with extraordinary combat strength. If that's the case, take me there, Yi Guchen said with a faint smile. Senior Dugu, if you want to get sacred herbs that nourish the soul, I'm afraid normal missions won't be enough, Su Fan said. Sacred herbs were already precious enough. As for sacred herbs that nourish the soul, they must be even more precious. No problem, let's go take a look first, Yi Guchen said. Then Su Fan brought Yi Guchen to the mission hall. The mission hall was where Sacred Cliff College's daily affairs were handled. Giving out missions was one of them. Yi Guchen did not plan to keep doing missions to train himself. He just needed to get sacred herbs. As soon as Yi Guchen entered the mission hall, he saw a huge screen. Many words were scrolling on the screen. Normally speaking, the academy wouldn't issue missions that were too difficult. For example, killing a supreme expert or something like that wouldn't be a form of training, but rather suicide. These missions were all within the scope of what the academy disciples could handle. Senior Brother Dugu, the missions are categorized into normal, difficult, and hell level. Normally, only by completing the hell level mission can one obtain the sacred medicine as a reward, Su Fan said. Yi Guchen frowned slightly and glanced over. There was no hell rank mission on the screen. Generally speaking, only disciples of the divine dwelling stage can complete a hell level mission. There was a hell level mission some time ago, and it was taken by Senior Brother Xuanlian, Su Fan said. Yi Guchen nodded slightly. As soon as he entered the academy, he asked Su Fan where the Xuanlian was. In the end, the Xuanlian had already gone out to do a mission. It must have been the hell level mission. Yi Guchen glanced at the screen and found that most of the missions were normal missions. There was only one difficult mission. If I accept a difficult mission, will I be able to obtain the sacred medicine? Yi Guchen asked. Su Fan spread out his hands and said, about 5 difficult missions are barely equivalent to a hell level mission. Then I'll accept this one, Yi Guchen said. He was determined to obtain the sacred medicine. Moreover, Yi Guchen knew that with his true strength, it shouldn't take him too long to complete the difficult mission. Yi Guchen walked forward to accept the mission. When a Sacred Cliff College disciple saw Yi Guchen's arrival, his spirits were lifted and he hurriedly shouted, "Greetings, Senior Brother Dugu." Yi Guchen had completely revealed his talent and strength during the admission ceremony. Therefore, there wasn't a single disciple in Sacred Cliff College who was so blind as to treat Yi Guchen coldly. "I'll accept this mission," Yi Guchen said indifferently. "This difficult mission requires 3 gold emblem disciples, and Senior Brother Dugu happens to be the last one," the disciple said. "Oh, who are the other 2? Yi Guchen asked. "It's Senior Sister Ling and Senior Brother Jiang," the disciple said truthfully. "Ling Mayin and Jiang Yan." Yi Guchen murmured and then nodded. Although these 2 people didn't get along with him, Yi Guchen didn't care about this. "The mission will begin in a month. The details are here." The disciple handed over a scroll. Yi Guchen didn't even look at it and directly put it into his origin ring. Since there was still a month's time, Yi Guchen could use this opportunity to cultivate and consolidate his cultivation. Looking at Yi Guchen's back, the disciple couldn't help but click his tongue and sigh. As expected of the Sword Devil, he didn't even look at the difficult mission. But this time, 3 gold emblem disciples were sent out together. This mission shouldn't be that simple. The disciple thought to himself as he shook his head. After accepting the mission, Yi Guchen returned to his cave residence. Not long after, Smoky Worry Traveler came to his door and humbly asked Yi Guchen for advice on swordsmanship. Yi Guchen had a good impression of Smoky Worry Traveler. Although they weren't familiar with each other, there was no problem with his character and trustworthiness. Therefore, Yi Guchen was very willing to give him advice. In the end, under Yi Guchen's advice, Smoky Worry Traveler was enlightened and suddenly saw the light. He was also quite grateful to Yi Guchen. After that, Mu Xingzu went to look for Yi Guchen unhappily. It turned out that the Tianxian College wanted Mu Xingzu to go back. Xingzhu doesn't want to go back to Tianxian College, Mu Xingzu said reluctantly. She was very greedy for the feeling of peace and comfort by Yi Guchen's side. "This time you've obtained the Origin Spirit Breakthrough Pill. You can go back to the college and break through to the Divine Dwelling stage." Yi Guchen patted Mu Xingzu's shoulder. "Okay." Mu Xingzu's eyes flashed with determination. She also knew that Yi Guchen's path ahead was filled with enemies and obstacles. Only by becoming stronger could she help Yi Guchen and stay by his side. After some small talk, Mu Xingzu also reluctantly left Sacred Cliff College. I'll cultivate in peace for a month. Yi Guchen was finally completely free. He directly went to the Spirit Gathering Pavilion. The Spirit Gathering Pavilion was located in a valley in the Divine Cliff Utopia. The entire valley was shaped like a funnel, and the surrounding spiritual energy surged into it. In the valley, a pavilion stood tall. The Spirit Gathering Pavilion was surrounded by the natural terrain of the valley that could gather spiritual energy. Inside the pavilion, there was an earth-level spirit gathering array that made the spiritual energy even denser. There was a supremacy elder guarding the entrance of the Spirit Gathering Pavilion. Seeing Yi Guchen's arrival, the elder did not put on any airs. He smiled and nodded at Yi Guchen, then opened the Spirit Gathering Pavilion to the public. There are 3 levels in the Spirit Gathering Pavilion. You're a gold emblem disciple, so you can enter the top level to cultivate for 10 days, the elder said. Thank you, elder. Yi Guchen cupped his hands and stepped into the Spirit Gathering Pavilion. There were many rooms in the Spirit Gathering Pavilion, and disciples were cultivating in many rooms. Yi Guchen felt that the spiritual energy on the first level was already extremely dense. He did not stop and stepped onto the second level. There were even fewer rooms on the second level, but the spiritual energy was even denser. Yi Guchen continued to go up to the third level. There were only 10 rooms on the third level. Yi Guchen realized that there were countless droplets of water floating in the air on the third level. These droplets of water were all spiritual liquid condensed from spiritual energy, and they fell like rain. What a wonderful place for cultivation. I wonder if I can reach a higher level after cultivating here for 10 days? Yi Guchen's eyes lit up and he was shocked. Chapter 933. At the Spirit Bridge of Heaven and Earth Realm. Part of the genuine qi in the Sea of Qi had already turned into liquid. If one were to absorb the spiritual qi of heaven and earth to cultivate, the speed would undoubtedly be much slower. But on the third floor of the Spirit Gathering Pavilion, the rich spiritual qi had already turned into spiritual liquid, which was perfect for Yi Guchen at his current stage. This was the benefit that Yi Guchen received after entering the academy. If he was alone in the Sword Dynasty, he would definitely not receive such generous treatment. Yi Guchen suppressed the sigh in his heart and prepared to enter a compartment to cultivate. But at this moment, he suddenly felt that in another compartment, there seemed to be a cultivation fluctuation of spiritual qi. Obviously, there were other people cultivating on the third floor. Because there was a protective array outside each compartment to prevent sudden disturbances, Yi Guchen did not mind. He chose a compartment and entered it. He sat cross-legged on the ground, calmed his mind, and began to cultivate. He activated the devouring power in his body and turned it into a miniature black hole. In an instant, Yi Guchen seemed to have turned into a bottomless black hole. The spiritual liquid floating in the air turned into a whirlpool and was absorbed by Yi Guchen's body. The spiritual liquid was extremely pure and thick. Yi Guchen felt that his cultivation was obviously loosening. He might be able to use the Spirit Gathering Pavilion to break through to the 5th level of the Spirit Bridge of Heaven and Earth. Just like this, 2 days passed. In 2 days, the spiritual liquid in Yi Guchen's compartment was almost completely absorbed. Yi Guchen was already immersed in cultivation and did not notice. He began to absorb the spiritual qi of the entire third floor of the Spirit Gathering Pavilion. At this moment, in another compartment, a handsome man in white was sitting cross-legged. It was Ouyang Tianji. Ouyang Tianji had already reached the bottleneck of the 9th level of the Spirit Bridge of Heaven and Earth. He was waiting for it to be completely consolidated, and he would use the elemental spirit breaking pill to break through. But because of this accident, he lost the elemental spirit breaking pill to Yi Guchen. Without the divine elixir pills, Ouyang Tianji could only come to the Spirit Gathering Pavilion to accumulate for a breakthrough. In fact, Ouyang Tianji had already accumulated enough. Taking the elemental spirit barrier breaking pill could greatly increase his chances of success, but without this pill, it didn't mean that he couldn't break through. When I break through to the divine dwelling stage, I will also charge into Saint Crossing Mountain. No matter what, I must suppress Duguwu Bai. Ouyang Tianji had an obsession in his heart. As the genius of the Ouyang clan, he had always been in the limelight since he was young. Furthermore, he was shrewd. All along, it had been others who had suffered losses while Ouyang Tianji had benefited. However, this was the first time he had fallen into the hands of Yi Guqin. Therefore, Ouyang Tianji would never let this matter rest. Why do I feel that the spiritual liquid is slightly thinner? Ouyang Tianji, who was sitting cross-legged in cultivation and preparing to break through, felt something strange. However, he didn't think too much about it, and continued to calm his mind and concentrate, because he was very close to breaking through to the divine dwelling stage. On the other side, Yi Guqin had been immersed in cultivation. The devouring power was completely displayed. The spiritual liquid on the third floor of the Spirit Gathering Pavilion turned into a whirlpool at a speed visible to the naked eye, and was then devoured and refined by Yi Guqin. The devouring power was extremely tyrannical. Even if Yi Guqin couldn't completely use the devouring power of the God Devourer, even if he could only borrow 1/10,000th of it, the effect would still be incomparably powerful. After another 3 days, the spiritual liquid on the third floor of the Spirit Gathering Pavilion became increasingly thin. What's going on? Who is cultivating? Ouyang Tianji felt that something was wrong. He was about to break through, but the embarrassing thing was that the concentration of spiritual liquid in the Spirit Gathering Pavilion seemed to have weakened a lot. And the most terrible thing was that Ouyang Tianji had already entered the state of breaking through. If he gave up halfway, the consequences would be very serious. Damn it! Ouyang Tianji once again activated his cultivation technique, erupting with a similar devouring power. But this devouring power was far inferior to Yi Guqin's devouring power. In the blink of an eye, a total of 9 days had passed. Even the elder guarding outside the Spirit Gathering Pavilion felt that something was wrong. What's going on? The spiritual energy has decreased by so much. The elder was stunned. He suddenly looked towards the third floor, and realized that there were 2 spiritual whirlpools, one big and one small. Those 2, could it be Duguwu Bai and Ouyang Tianji? The elder's face froze. The small whirlpool was fine. Although it absorbed a lot of spiritual energy, it wasn't shocking. But the big whirlpool was terrifying. It was like the eye of a storm, devouring all the spiritual energy around it. Elder, what's going on? The spiritual energy on the first floor has dried up. Yeah, the second floor is about the same. Could it be that those senior brothers have taken up the third floor? Not long after, the disciples on the first and second floors of the Spirit Gathering Pavilion all ran out noisily. There are only 2 people on the third floor of the Spirit Gathering Pavilion. The elder smiled bitterly and shook his head. The hundreds of disciples that came out of the Spirit Gathering Pavilion all looked towards the third floor. When they saw the whirlpool that was as huge as a tornado, many people were dumbfounded. Who is cultivating, and why is there such a big movement? It's only Ouyang Tianji and Duguwu Bai, the elder said. That big whirlpool, could it be senior brother Ouyang? He is already at the peak of the 9th level of the spirit bridge of heaven and earth, and is likely to break through to the divine dwelling stage. It should be. What bad luck! I didn't expect senior brother Ouyang to break through. Many disciples shook their heads. If one broke through to the divine dwelling stage, it would indeed consume a huge amount of spiritual energy. But after a while, many disciples curiously looked on. They wanted to know if Ouyang Tianji could break through to the divine dwelling stage. At this moment, Ouyang Tianji was already suffering unspeakably. Damn it! Who is it? If I find out, I won't forgive you. In the third floor's compartment, Ouyang Tianji's eyes were bloodshot, and his face was terrifyingly pale. He had already used up all the quasi-saint medicines and quasi-saint pills in his origin ring. But even so, it was still not enough to break through. Ouyang Tianji tried his best to activate his cultivation method, wanting to swallow more spiritual energy. But how could it be compared to Yi Guqin's tyrannical devouring power? Soon, Ouyang Tianji's qi was overturned, and his aura became chaotic. The skin on his body swelled to a blood-red color, like a lobster that had rolled out of a pot of boiling oil. This was the sign of a qi deviation during a breakthrough. Puchi. Suddenly, blood flowed out from Ouyang Tianji's 7 orifices, and he spurted out a large mouthful of blood. He instantly fell to the ground, and his body twitched uncontrollably as if he was being cut by 1,000 blades. His aura fell from the verge of the divine dwelling stage all the way to the 9th level, and not even the peak. At this point, Ouyang Tianji had failed to break through, and he had lost at least a few months' worth of spiritual energy. Who is it? Ouyang Tianji roared, the veins on his neck bulging, and blood dripping onto the ground. Cutting off one's opportunity was like killing one's parents, let alone breaking through to the divine dwelling stage at such an important juncture. Ouyang Tianji was so angry that his internal organs were burning, and he wished he could cut the person who had absorbed the spiritual energy into 1,000 pieces. And in another compartment, outside Yi Guqin's body, spiritual energy was like rain. His entire body was shrouded in a dazzling brilliance, and his aura was strong. After absorbing the spiritual energy of almost the entire spirit-gathering pavilion, Yi Guqin's heaven and earth spirit bridge in his qi si had condensed another section. His cultivation had officially broken through to the 5th level of the heaven and earth spirit bridge. Chapter 934. I've broken through to the 5th level of the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. Yi Guqin, who was sitting cross-legged in the room, suddenly opened his eyes. 2 rays of light flashed past. His aura had reached a new level again. The spiritual liquid around me has decreased by so much. Yi Guqin also reacted, but he immediately understood. Yi Guqin's sea of qi was different from ordinary people. It was the limit of 10,000 feet. Ordinary martial artists might not consume too much spirit qi when breaking through a small level, but for Yi Guqin, even a small breakthrough would consume far more spirit qi than ordinary people. I need to consolidate it again. There was still 1 day left. Yi Guqin did not rush out. Instead, he took out a quasi-sage elixir and consumed it to consolidate his cultivation at the 5th level of the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. On the other side, Ouyang Tianji walked out of the room. His white robe was stained with blood, and he staggered as he walked. Obviously, the failure of this breakthrough had caused great harm to Ouyang Tianji. He walked to the room where Yi Guqin was, and his eyes were bloodshot. It's you. Who are you? Ouyang Tianji roared and could not help but attack. But outside each room, there was a protective array to prevent disturbances. There was also a sound insulation effect, so Yi Guqin could not be disturbed. Ouyang Tianji walked out of the spirit-gathering pavilion with bloodshot eyes. Seeing Ouyang Tianji appear, the disciples who were watching from the sidelines immediately swarmed forward. Some of the disciples who wanted to flatter Ouyang Tianji saw Ouyang Tianji's miserable appearance before they could even congratulate him. What's going on? Why is senior brother Ouyang's aura still at the 9th level? No, it feels even weaker than before. Did senior brother Ouyang fail to break through? These disciples were stunned. Ouyang Tianji's face darkened. He found the old guard and asked, Elder, who else went up to the 3rd level? Duga Wubai, the elder said lightly. What? It's him again. Ouyang Tianji's body trembled. His eyes filled with incomparable scarlet and resentment. Blood rushed to his head. Even a scheming person like him couldn't help but reveal such an expression. It could be seen how deep the anger and resentment in his heart was. When he thought of how he had lost his elemental spirit bottleneck-breaking pill to Yi Guqin, and now because of Yi Guqin, he had failed to break through and lost several months of spiritual energy for nothing. Ouyang Tianji was so angry that he was trembling. Even his face was trembling slightly. At this moment, Yi Guqin, who had completely consolidated his cultivation, finally walked out of the spirit-gathering pavilion. Yi Guqin was in a very good state at the moment. His aura was strong, and his demeanor was disdainful. It was a stark contrast to the embarrassing appearance of Ouyang Tianji when he came out. Duga Wubai. Seeing Yi Guqin walk out so calmly, Ouyang Tianji almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Oh, it's you. Yi Guqin narrowed his eyes. He didn't expect that the person in the other room was actually Ouyang Tianji. It was really a small world for enemies. However, Yi Guqin glanced at Ouyang Tianji's appearance and roughly knew what had happened. Sorry, it wasn't intentional. Yi Guqin nodded lightly and was about to leave. In fact, Yi Guqin didn't deliberately want to deal with Ouyang Tianji. Firstly, Yi Guqin didn't know that the person in the other room was Ouyang Tianji. Secondly, he was immersed in his cultivation at that time and didn't care about anything else. Dugawu Bai, you caused me to fail in breaking through to the divine dwelling stage. Do you think you can leave just like that? Ouyang Tianji clenched his fists, the veins on his temples throbbing. The loss this time, for Ouyang Tianji, was absolutely disastrous. Stop when it's appropriate. Yi Guqin scrunched his brows. Previously, Ouyang Tianji had plotted against him. Yi Guqin was already very good that he could say a word of apology. You must compensate. Ouyang Tianji said coldly and angrily. Yi Guqin ignored him. Ouyang Tianji's body flashed, blocking in front of Yi Guqin. Get out of the way. Yi Guqin said coldly. The aura of the 5th level Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge erupted. His chi swept out like a gust of wind, forcing Ouyang Tianji back again and again. Your chi. Ouyang Tianji's face froze. The chi cultivation that Yi Guqin displayed was in no way weaker than his current 9th level cultivation. Enough, don't mess around. If you want to fight, go to the battle arena. The Spirit Gathering Pavilion is not a place for you to quarrel. The elder shouted. Feeling the faint threat from Yi Guqin's body, coupled with the fact that he had failed in his breakthrough and was injured, Ouyang Tianji could only grit his teeth and swallow his anger. Dugawu Bai, wait. Ouyang Tianji stared at Yi Guqin, then turned and left. His bloodshot eyes flickered with a cold and poisonous light. Dugawu Bai, you seem to have received a mission then. Looking at Ouyang Tianji's back, Yi Guqin frowned slightly. He knew that with Ouyang Tianji's temperament he would not give up so easily. However, Yi Guqin was not someone who would be bullied easily. After cupping his hands slightly at the elder, Yi Guqin came to another treasured place in Sacred Cliff College, the Sword Soul Cave. The Sword Soul Cave was a place specially used to comprehend sword intent and swordsmanship. Inside the Sword Soul Cave, there was also an elder guarding it. After seeing that it was Yi Guqin, the elder laughed and let him in. Inside the Sword Soul Cave, there were countless caves that extended in all directions. As soon as Yi Guqin entered, he felt a surge of sword-based Taoist rhyme. He chose a cave and went deep inside. To his surprise, he found that in the depths of the cave, there were countless glittering stones. Within each stone, there seemed to be sword chi flowing, emitting a shocking Taoist rhyme. Are these the sword rhyme stones that I obtained from the sword tomb? Yi Guqin thought to himself. The sword rhyme stones in the Sword Soul Cave were obtained from the sword tomb, one of the 4 great secret realms of the Sword Dynasty. Yi Guqin did not waste any time. In the depths of the cave, where the Taoist rhyme was the thickest, he sat cross-legged and activated the power of the Enlightenment Ancient Tree to comprehend the sword rhyme stones, the Enlightenment Ancient Tree, and Yi Guqin's sword demon talent. His comprehension of various sword intents and sword principles increased once again. Yi Guqin had been comprehending the 5 elements sword intents for a long time. Now, with the help of the opportunity here, Yi Guqin finally broke through the threshold and turned the 5 elements sword principles into the 5 elements sword principles. Now Yi Guqin had a total of 5 elements, edgeless, and azura sword principles. Together with the hard and soft sword principles, there were a total of 4 kinds, which would scare a lot of people to death. Even in the Sword Dynasty, there were very few people who had mastered many types of sword principles. In addition, Yi Guqin had also comprehended the Thunderbolt sword intent with the help of the 9 Dragon Thunder Prison and the 9-colored Dark Bomb. Of course, the hardest to comprehend was naturally the creation sword intent of all creation. Even with the help of the Sword Soul Cave and the Enlightenment Ancient Tree, it was not something that could be comprehended in a short time. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. Yi Guqin had gained a lot, and he had a preliminary understanding of the Thunderbolt sword intent. In addition, Yi Guqin had also comprehended the lower royal level sword art, the divine sword lightning controlling technique, and was not far from the initial success. If I want to comprehend the sword intent of all creation, I'm afraid I have to go to the sword tomb, one of the 4 great secret realms. Yi Guchen muttered to himself. The Sword Soul Cave alone could bring Yi Guchen such progress. It was hard to imagine how much he would gain if he could cultivate in the Sword Tomb, one of the 4 great secret realms. It might not be impossible to comprehend the sword intent of all creation. In general, Yi Guchen had gained a lot in the 20 days of cultivation in the Spirit Gathering Pavilion and the Sword Soul Cave, and his strength had increased again. Not only did his cultivation break through to rank 5, but he also comprehended the 5-element sword principles, comprehended the Thunderbolt sword intent, and cultivated the Divine Sword lightning controlling technique. After his strength increased, Yi Guchen could deal with the difficult level mission more easily. There were still 10 days before the mission began. Yi Guchen did not idle, and he made use of the 10 days to immerse himself in cultivation. Chapter 935. A month passed quickly. Yi Guchen had been cultivating all this time. His life was very fulfilling, and his strength had increased a lot. On this day, Yi Guchen slowly opened his eyes in a high-class cave abode. A sharp light flashed in his eyes. The spirit chi in a high-class cave abode was more than 10 times that of the outside world. Although it was not as good as a place like the Spirit Gathering Pavilion, it was still a great help to Yi Guchen when he cultivated. After 10 days of cultivation consolidation, Yi Guchen had reached his peak state. It's time to complete the mission. Yi Guchen got up and went to the mission hall. It had been a month since he received the mission. Today Yi Guchen, Ling Mayin, and Jiang Yan would go on a mission together. Soon, Yi Guchen arrived at the mission hall. However, he did not see Ling Mayin and Jiang Yan. The Sacred Cliff College disciple in charge of issuing missions saw Yi Guchen, and his expression was slightly unnatural. Where are the 2 of them? Yi Guchen stepped forward and asked calmly. That senior brother Dugu, to tell you the truth, senior sister Ling and senior brother Jiang have already left a few days ago. The disciple said awkwardly. Are you trying to intimidate me? Yi Guchen's lips curled up into a cold smile when he heard this. Ling Mayin and Jiang Yan had left early. It was obvious that they wanted to shake off Yi Guchen. They wanted to complete the difficult level mission alone and intimidate Yi Guchen. Senior brother Dugu, why don't we change the mission? The disciple advised. In the disciple's eyes, Yi Guchen had just arrived at Sacred Cliff College, and it was his first time going on a difficult level mission. If he did not have Ling Mayin and Jiang Yan's support, he would be in danger. No need. Yi Guchen shook his head. He took out the scroll that recorded the contents of the mission and glanced at it. Go to the ancient Chaos Wasteland and explore a mysterious mine. Yi Guchen muttered to himself as he looked at the scroll. The ancient Chaos Wasteland was located tens of thousands of miles north of the Sword Dynasty. It was a wasteland located between the gaps of many dynasties. The biggest characteristic of the ancient Chaos Wasteland was that it had many rich mineral deposits and produced all kinds of rare metal ores. The various dynasties more or less occupied some mines and territories in the ancient Chaos Wasteland. The second characteristic of the ancient Chaos Wasteland was that it was chaotic. Not only were there many bandits, but there were also many ferocious demonic beasts. Therefore, it had always been a place of tempering for the geniuses of the various dynasties. As for the origin of this mission, it was because several martial artists of the Sword Dynasty had discovered a mysterious mineral deposit. There seemed to be some sort of secret hidden within. However, that mine was not only discovered by the Sword Dynasty, but also the War God Dynasty, the Mola Dynasty, the Tyrannical Saber Dynasty, and the other dynasties. Do you have any information on these dynasties? Yi Guchen asked. Yes. The disciple handed Yi Guchen another scroll. Yi Guchen glanced around and understood what was going on. Although the Sword Dynasty was temporarily the first of the 100 dynasties in the South Horizon region. However, the second-ranked War God Dynasty, the third-ranked Mola Dynasty, and the fourth-ranked Tyrannical Saber Dynasty were not much weaker than the Sword Dynasty. They all had more than double digits of false saint experts. In comparison, the Sword Dynasty was currently facing internal and external troubles, and might not be able to intimidate these dynasties. No wonder this mission is classified as difficult. It's because the top geniuses of these dynasties might appear. Yi Guqin pondered. It was just like the Sword Dynasty had the Sword ranking. The War God Dynasty had the War God ranking, the Mola Dynasty had the Blood ranking, and the Tyrannical Saber Dynasty had the Saber ranking. This time, the mysterious mineral deposit had been discovered in the ancient Chaos Wasteland, and the geniuses of these dynasties might appear. Therefore, this mission was classified as difficult. Yi Guqin finally understood why 3 gold emblem disciples were required to go on this mission at the same time. It was also a precaution. Senior brother Dugu, why don't we just forget about it? Wait a few more days. Perhaps there will be other difficult missions. The disciples still wanted to persuade him. The mission in the ancient Chaos Wasteland was dangerous to begin with, and the geniuses of other dynasties might appear. It was also Yi Guqin's first mission, and he was left behind. In the disciples' opinion, Yi Guqin might not even be able to return alive, let alone complete the mission. I've made up my mind. Goodbye. Yi Guqin nodded and left. Even without Ling Mayin and Jiang Yan, Yi Guqin was prepared to complete the mission alone. To Yi Guqin, who had experienced many dangers, this level of danger was really not worth mentioning. Soon, Yi Guqin rode on a red-crowned crane that Sacred Cliff College reared as a means of transportation, and left Sacred Cliff College. He flew towards the ancient Chaos Wasteland. Not long after Yi Guqin left, 2 elders stood on a mountain peak in Sacred Cliff College. It was Elder Ime and Beixian Elder. Beixian Elder wanted to say something but hesitated. Elder, are we really going to let Dugu Wubai go to the ancient Chaos Wasteland alone? It was obvious that Beixian Elder was also worried about Yi Guqin's safety. Haha, isn't this a good opportunity for him to train? Elder Ime was not worried at all. But I heard that the prodigies of the War God Empire, Maoyuo Empire, and other factions will also appear. Will it? Beixian Elder was still worried. Relax. Elder Ime smiled faintly. At the same time, he sighed in his heart. You don't even know the true identity of Dugu Wubai. If we really knew, then the ones who would be worried wouldn't be Dugu Wubai, but the prodigies of the other empires. At the same time, after Yi Guqin left, Ouyang Tianji sat cross-legged in his cave, and secretly sent a message. Big brother, you must avenge me this time. Ouyang Tianji said coldly, his tone full of hatred. Don't worry, I'm also going to the ancient Chaos Wasteland this time. Dugu Wubai is just a clown. This was the message from the Jade Slip. That's good. Ouyang Tianji's face was full of vengeance as he sneered. Dugu Wubai, I'll definitely make you pay the price for this trip to the ancient Chaos Wasteland. Thousands of miles north of Sacred Cliff College, 2 red-crowned cranes flew across the sky. They were the demonic beasts raised by Sacred Cliff College. 2 figures sat cross-legged on the 2 red-crowned cranes. They were Ling Mayin and Jiang Yan. Ling Mayin was wearing a black dress that outlined her slender figure. She frowned slightly. Isn't it a little inappropriate for us to do this? Ling Mayin was slightly hesitant because they had left a few days earlier and left Yi Guqin behind. Senior sister Ling, what are you worried about? Do you think that Dugu Wubai would dare to go to the ancient Chaos Wasteland alone without us? Jiang Yan sneered. It was Jiang Yan's idea to leave Yi Guqin behind. He wanted to give Yi Guqin a show of strength. Hearing this, Ling Mayin nodded slightly. The ancient Chaos Wasteland was incomparably dangerous. According to her assumption, Yi Guqin would not set off alone. But this mission is not that simple, Ling Mayin said. Senior sister, don't worry. The 2 of us are enough for this mission. Moreover, we can use this opportunity to suppress Dugu Wubai's arrogance. Senior sister, you should be happy to see this, Jiang Yan said. Ling Mayin was speechless. She had agreed to Jiang Yan's proposal because she wanted to polish Yi Guqin's arrogant character and make him restrain himself. Dugu Wubai, your talent is excellent, but your character is too arrogant. I hope that this time you can stay in the college and reflect on yourself. Ling Mayin sighed inwardly. Chapter 936. Ling Mayin and Jiang Yan did not know. Yi Guqin, whom they thought would not follow, was already heading towards the direction of the ancient Chaos Wasteland by himself. Several days later, Yi Guchen finally arrived at the edge of the ancient chaos wasteland on his crane. Yi Guchen sat cross-legged on the back of the crane, gazing into the distance. As far as the eye could see, the distant horizon was a wasteland, showing a kind of lifeless sandy yellow. The wind that blew against his face seemed to carry a slight smell of blood. Obviously, the ancient chaos wasteland was not a good place. But for Yi Guchen, who was used to seeing great storms, such a dangerous place could not make him feel the slightest bit of fear. Yi Guchen landed at the edge of the wasteland. If he were to fly in the air in the ancient chaos wasteland, he would probably immediately be targeted by countless bandits. There is still a long way to go to the mysterious mineral deposit, Yi Guchen muttered, stepping into the ancient chaos wasteland. On the wasteland, the wind and sand were fierce, and there were almost no plants. From time to time, there would be some empty mines, standing tall and bare. After another 2 days, Yi Guchen finally entered the depths of the ancient chaos wasteland. In these 2 days, Yi Guchen also encountered many bandits, or martial practitioners from other dynasties. With Yi Guchen's current strength, dealing with these people was naturally easy. And just as Yi Guchen continued to carefully advance in the wasteland, the sound of fighting suddenly came from not far ahead. There is movement. Yi Guchen's eyes darkened, and his body approached a sand dune, looking over. In his line of sight, 4 figures appeared. The 4 figures, 2 men and 2 women, from their clothes, should be of extraordinary birth, like the genius disciples of the dynasties. The 4 figures were currently surrounded by a dense pack of monster beasts. These monster beasts were 30 feet long, shaped like earthworms, with sandy yellow scales on the surface of their bodies. They had no eyes, and their heads only had spiral-shaped sharp teeth, from which some corrosive liquid was spat out from time to time. It's the death worms. Yi Guchen's eyes narrowed. Before coming to the ancient chaos wasteland, he had read the relevant information. In the ancient chaos wasteland, the most feared thing was not the bandits, nor the people of the various dynasties, but the monster beasts, the death worms. These death worms, in large numbers, could sneak into the ground to launch a sneak attack, and it was impossible to guard against. The scales on the surface of their bodies were as hard as metal, and had the effect of resisting true chi attacks. All of these characteristics made the death worm a demonic beast that everyone in the ancient chaos wasteland would turn pale at the mention of. And the 4 people in front of them were trapped by the death worms were hordes. With a glance, Yi Guchen estimated there were at least 20 to 30 of them. Every death worm was the heaven and the heaven-earth spirit realm, peak. However, among the 4 of them, the one with the highest cultivation was only at stage 9, and the one with the weakest cultivation was at stage 7. Shrink into a defensive circle and hold on. Among the 4 of them, a white-clothed woman yelled. She was tall and slender, and her black hair was held up by a jade hairpin. She exuded a classical aura, as if she had walked out of a landscape painting. Even though she was in danger, she was still fearless. Hers was at the heaven and earth spirit bridges. Damn it, we're so unlucky. Among the 4, there was a heaven and earth spirit bridge prodigy at the heaven and earth spirit bridge. He was a man in a light purple robe, and he looked quite luxurious. But at this moment the man's was not looking good. Brother Yang, we won't die here, right? A woman in a red dress with a seductive appearance said with a pale face, her delicate body pressed against the man. Hers was the lowest was. We'll count ourselves unlucky. The last person was a strong youth with If we don't break out and delay any longer, more death worms will gather. The woman in white frowned. Damn it. The man in the light purple robe's face darkened. He came from an extraordinary background, and he did have a protective treasure on him, but it was of great use and could not be wasted here. Yi Guchen looked at the 4 from the sand dune not far away, and there was not much change in his expression. There were people dying all the time in the ancient chaos wilderness, and Yi Guchen was definitely not a nosy saint. The life and death of others had nothing to do with Yi Guchen. Even if the 4 of them came from a good background, Yi Guchen had no intention of befriending them. After thinking for a while, Yi Guchen did not stay any longer. His figure flashed, and he was about to go around the trapped woman in white and continue to move forward. However, at this moment, the woman in white who was struggling to resist moved hers divine sense. As if she had sensed something. She faced Yi Guchen's direction and shouted, "Who is it? Can you help me?" "You actually sensed it?" Yi Guchen stopped in his tracks. He was slightly surprised. The woman's divine sense was quite sharp. As soon as the woman in white spoke, the other three also reacted. The man in the light purple robe had a look of joy on his face, and he shouted, "I am Yang Haolie, the 8th prince of the great Qian dynasty. I hope you can help me. I will definitely thank you." The great Qian dynasty? Yi Guchen's eyes were strange. Yi Guchen did not know much about the great Qian dynasty, but he had heard of it. Among the 100 great dynasties of the South Horizon region, the great Qian dynasty could be ranked in the top 10. Even if it was not as good as the Sword dynasty, the War God dynasty, the Moro dynasty and so on, it was not bad. At least it was not inferior to the Phoenix dynasty, the Purple Glory dynasty, and so on that Yi Guchen had come into contact with before. Unfortunately, Yi Guchen was still indifferent. He was already a gold emblem disciple of one of the 5 great academies of the Sword dynasty, so he really did not care about the great Qian dynasty's prince's reward. Seeing that Yi Guchen did not show any signs of helping, the 8th prince became anxious. The 8th prince named Yang Haolie also became anxious and shouted, "Brother, to tell you the truth, this prince has obtained a secret mine, and there may be extremely precious mica in it." Hearing the mention of mica, Yi Guchen, who was about to leave, suddenly stopped in his tracks. Mica, recorded in the Heavenly Works mineral collection, was an extremely precious and rare material. Not only could it perfectly fuse with various metals to repair defects, but it could also increase the success rate of forging and the quality of divine weapons. In fact, Yi Guchen had always wanted to repair the 9 Dragon Thunder prison, but unfortunately, he did not have the ability for the time being, and he could not find suitable materials. And mica was undoubtedly the best material. Seeing Yi Guchen stop, Yang Haoye's eyes changed and he said again, "Not only that, there may even be millennium-old mica in that secret mine. As long as you are willing to help, we are willing to share it." Millennium-old mica? Yi Guchen was tempted. Millennium-old mica was even rarer, and it was a material used to forge some high-grade and supreme-grade divine weapons. Above that was the nearly extinct millennium-old mica, which was equivalent to a divine material. The only divine material Yi Guchen had was the 9 orifices divine stone. Yi Guchen did not think about millennium-old mica. Even millennium-old mica was enough for him to help this time. "How do I know that you are not lying?" Yi Guchen finally responded. "We are not lying." Before Yang Haolie could speak, the woman in the white dress spoke. The woman in the white dress had a pair of beautiful obsidian-like eyes, and there was calmness in them. Yi Guchen thought for a moment and directly attacked. Chapter 937. I will open a gap for you to escape. Yi Guchen flipped his wrist and a long sword appeared in his hand. However, it was not the 9 Dragon Thunder prison. Yi Guchen had always been on guard against strangers. After all, the 9 Dragon Thunder prison was a quasi-heavenly tribulation divine weapon. It was hard to guarantee that Yang Haolie and the others would not be suspicious. Coincidentally, when Yi Guchen became a gold emblem disciple, he had received a supreme-grade mystical pattern divine weapon. Yi Guchen took it out to use at this moment. Hearing Yi Guchen's words, Yang Haolie and the others were overjoyed. The white-clothed woman also heaved a sigh of relief. However, when they saw Yi Guchen revealing the aura of a level 5 spiritual bridge of heaven and earth, the joy in their eyes turned into doubt. Only a level 5 spiritual bridge of heaven and earth? Yang Haoye's eyes narrowed slightly. Yi Guchen did not completely unleash the genuine qi of his sea of qi. He was still on guard against Yang Haolie and the others and did not reveal his full strength. Yi Guchen swung his sword, and the sword light swept across like a river of stars. It was the move of the 3 ultimate sacred swords, the star-breaking sword. The sword light swept across like a river of stars and swept towards the group of deathworms, temporarily opening a gap. Yang Haolie, the white-clothed woman and the others who were trapped did not hesitate and rushed towards the gap. If they were late by a step, they would be surrounded by the death worms again. After Yi Guqin swung his sword, his figure also retreated quickly, and was not implicated by the death worms. The group of death worms emitted extremely ear-piercing sound waves and rolled in the sand. Obviously, Yi Guqin's sudden attack had caused the whole group of worms to fall into chaos. Taking advantage of the chaos, Yang Haoye and the others broke out of the encirclement and finally rushed out of the encirclement of the death worms. After flying for hundreds of miles, Yang Haoye and the others stopped, panting and adjusting their genuine qi. Not long after, Yi Guqin appeared and stood in front of Yang Haoye and the others. The atmosphere suddenly became a little strange. Yang Haoye's eyes flickered. Yi Guqin was the same as them, a 9th-level spirit bridge of heaven and earth. Perhaps Yang Haoye would think highly of Yi Guqin and treat him with caution. However, he was only at the 5th level of the spirit bridge of heaven and earth. He was even weaker than the weakest of the four, the seductive woman in the red dress. The right to speak was under the condition that both parties were equal in strength. There was no equality between the strong and the weak. Yi Guqin's expression remained indifferent as he looked at Yang Haoye's faintly changing gaze. However, a cold glint flashed across his pitch-black eyes. Yi Guqin was not a kind person. If Yang Haoye went back on his words, regardless of whether he was the 8th prince of the great Qian dynasty, Yi Guqin wouldn't care. Just as the atmosphere was stagnant, the white-clothed woman with a classical beauty spoke. "My name is Su Jiqing. I come from the Cloud Billow dynasty. Thank you for your help, young master." The woman named Su Jiqing had an indifferent and distant temperament. She was as cold as smoke. Her aloofness was not like Yu Shuangyan's aloofness, nor was it like Ling Moyin's harshness. Instead, it was as if she was born with such a calm and indifferent personality. The Cloud Billow dynasty. Yi Guqin murmured. Among the 100 great dynasties, the Cloud Billow dynasty's ranking was also extremely high, being ranked 9th. "My name is Lu Ru. I come from the Mountainous Sea dynasty," the seductive woman in the red dress said faintly with a hint of arrogance in her voice. The Mountainous Sea dynasty was slightly inferior to the Cloud Billow dynasty and the Great Qian dynasty, but it was also ranked in the top 20. The last strong youth was from the Great Zhou dynasty. His name was Zhou Yan. Yi Guqin understood that Yang Haoye, Su Jiqing, and the others were training together in the ancient Chaos Wasteland, and accidentally found a secret mine. On the way to the secret mine, they were besieged by death worms. They were then met by Yi Guqin and rescued. "Brother, may I know your name and which dynasty you come from?" After the crisis was completely resolved, Yang Haoye recovered his high and mighty status as a prince and asked calmly, "That's right. Where did this little brother come from?" The seductive woman called Lu Ru chuckled, and said with a hint of contempt in her voice, "The few of them all came from a flourishing dynasty. They naturally looked down on Yi Guqin, even more since he came from a small dynasty." Yi Guqin sneered in his heart as he looked at Yang Haoye and the others who had changed their attitude almost instantly. He said faintly, "I'm Dugu Wubai from the Sword Dynasty." "What? The Sword Dynasty?" Yang Haoye and the others were shocked when they heard Yi Guqin's words. Their eyes were filled with extreme bewilderment as they looked at Yi Guqin. Even Su Jiqing, who had a calm temperament, revealed surprise in her eyes as she stared deeply at Yi Guqin. The Sword Dynasty, the leader of the South Horizon region's 100 great dynasties, was too famous. Even in the ancient Chaos Wasteland, the Sword Dynasty controlled an extremely vast territory. Moreover, the prodigies of the Sword Dynasty were not weak, especially the prodigies of the Sword ranking, who were feared by the other dynasties. However, in the eyes of Yang Haoye, Su Jiqing, and the others, even if Yi Guqin was from the Sword Dynasty, his cultivation was only at the 5th stage of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. It was impossible for him to be a prodigy of the Sword ranking. So Brother Dugu is from the Sword Dynasty. Yang Haoye's expression was slightly serious. It was as if he was a completely different person from before. Lu Ru and Zhou Yan also withdrew their contemptuous expressions. Looking at the expressions of Yang Haoye and the others, Yi Guqin knew that they did not know the name of the Sword Demon. After all, Yi Guqin had risen not long ago. Although his reputation in the Sword Dynasty was great, it had not spread to the other dynasties. It was understandable that young Halia and the others did not know. If they knew that Yi Guchen was ranked 10th on the sword ranking, they would be even more afraid. Brother Dugu, could it be that you're from the Sword Dynasty's 5 great colleges? Young Halia continued to probe. I am from Sacred Cliff College. Yi Guchen nodded. Young Halia, Su Jiqing, and the others all looked at Yi Guchen's chest at the same time. When they saw that Yi Guchen's chest was empty, Young Halia, Lu Ru, and the others breathed a sigh of relief. They were also aware of the rankings of the 5 great colleges' disciples. Generally speaking, Gold Emblem disciples could not be provoked too much. That's right, with his 5th stage strength, how could he be a Gold Emblem disciple from the 5 great colleges? Young Halia laughed in his heart. Since he was not a Gold Emblem disciple, young Halia did not need to be overly cautious. After all, he was also a prince of a country. Looking at young Halia and the others' expressions, Yi Guchen knew what they were thinking. However, Yi Guchen did not point it out. It was just that he was not wearing a gold emblem. Can we go to the secret mine now? Yi Guchen asked. Young Halia, Lu Ru, Zhou Yan, and the others looked at each other with hesitation. Although Yi Guchen was from the Sword Dynasty, he was neither a sword-ranking genius nor a gold emblem disciple. Therefore, in young Halia and the others' eyes, he was not as intimidating as before. Looking at young Halia and the others' hesitation, Yi Guchen's expression turned cold. At this time, Su Jiqing spoke. Of course, since young noble is willing to help, we should return the favor. Jiqing this. Young Halia hesitated. No need to say any more, young noble, let's go. Su Jiqing smiled faintly. Many thanks. Yi Guchen cupped his hands in salute. Su Jiqing did not say anything else and led Yi Guchen away. Behind them, Young Halia's expression darkened with a hint of coldness. Big brother Yang, look at that Su Jiqing, really? Lu Ru said as her delicate body pressed against Young Halia's body. Keep up. Young Halia said solemnly as he pushed Lu Ru away. Lu Ru's expression changed slightly as she looked at Su Jiqing's back with a trace of jealousy and hatred. It was obvious that this small group of 4 was not so harmonious. Chapter 938. After that, Yi Guchen, led by Su Jiqing, headed to the secret mine. Along the way, Su Jiqing and Yi Guchen discussed some topics related to the way of the sword. Although Su Jiqing was not a member of the Sword Dynasty, she also used a sword. Therefore, she got along quite well with Yi Guchen. This made young Halia's eyes a little hazy. Su Jiqing was born in a noble family of the Cloud Billow Dynasty, and her background was not weak. Young Halia had always been interested in Su Jiqing, and he also had the idea of getting close to Su Jiqing on this trip to the ancient Chaos Wasteland. If possible, it would be best if he could win her over. Unfortunately, Su Jiqing's personality was cold and her strength was not weak, so young Halia could not force her. As for Lu Ru, she liked young Halia. Unfortunately, she was inferior to Su Jiqing in terms of status, cultivation, and appearance. Therefore, she could not win young Halia's favor. 2 days later, Yi Guchen finally saw the secret mine that Su Jiqing and the others had mentioned. The secret mine was located in a mountain range and was surrounded by weeds. There was a cave hidden in the depths of the mountain. The entrance of the cave was deep and serene, like the mouth of a beast. That's the secret mine where the mica is hidden, Su Jiqing said in a low voice. Oh, is there a monster in the secret mine? Yi Guchen couldn't help but ask when he saw the cautious appearance of Su Jiqing and the others. There may be a stage 6 Deathworm King in the secret mine, young Halia said in a slightly cold voice. The reason why they did not use their trump cards when they were surrounded by the Deathworms was to deal with the stage 6 Deathworm King that might appear in the secret mine. A stage 6 monster? Yi Guchen frowned. A stage 6 monster was equivalent to the divine dwelling stage of the human race. It was no wonder that Su Jiqing, young Halia and the others looked as if they were about to face a great enemy. However, for Yi Guchen, even if he could not defeat a 6th-ranked demonic beast, he could at least retreat from it calmly. Brother Dugu, that secret mine is very dangerous. Are you sure you want to enter? Young Halia suddenly asked. Lu Ru and Zhou Yin simultaneously looked at Yi Guqin. Obviously in their eyes, with Yi Guqin's strength, even if he entered the secret mine, he would only be a burden. Su Jiqing was also slightly hesitant. She did not despise Yi Guqin for being weak, but she felt that it might be dangerous for Yi Guqin to enter. "Young master, there might be great danger in the mine," Su Jiqing said hesitantly. "You don't have to worry about me when the time comes." Yi Guqin smiled calmly. Since he had encountered this secret mine, how could Yi Guqin give up on entering? As long as there was the slightest possibility of the existence of thousand-year-old mica, Yi Guqin would not miss it. "Since Brother Dugu asked so, then let's go together. But we might not be able to take care of you when the time comes." Yang Haoye smiled indifferently. Although Yi Guqin helped them out, Yang Haoye and Lu Ru did not have a good attitude towards Yi Guqin. The weak were naturally looked down upon. Yi Guqin did not say anything, his eyes indifferent. Soon, the few of them held their breaths and entered the secret cave. As soon as they entered, Yi Guqin felt a cold and gloomy air. The cave was deep and dark. After they went 100 feet in, they found that there were many strange glowing ores around them. Copper peacock stone fluorite, illusory crystal iron. Yi Guqin muttered to himself. There were many rare ores in this secret mine. "Young master knows so much about metal ores. Do you dabble in forging as well?" Su Jiqing was slightly surprised. "You could say so." Yi Guqin smiled. Forging was a sideline for him. So Brother Dugu is a forging master. No wonder his cultivation is slightly mediocre. Most of his energy is spent on forging. Seeing Su Jiqing and Yi Guqin talking, Yang Haoye felt a knot in his heart, and could not help but speak with some sarcasm. "Yang Haoye, that's enough. Young Master Dugu helped us out." Hearing Yang Haoye's words, Su Jiqing frowned. Yang Haoye was silent, but the coldness in his eyes became more and more condensed. After a while, Yi Guqin and the others also went deep into the secret mine. Suddenly, there was a hissing sound in front of them. There seemed to be something wriggling in the underground soil. Everyone stopped in their tracks. Su Jiqing flipped her jade sword, and a strong surge of genuine qi condensed in her body, and then gathered on the blade of her sword. She stabbed her sword, and thick, turbid blood spurted out from the soil. Su Jiqing's sword directly pierced through a death worm. It seems that they were holding back before. Yi Guqin saw this scene and thought to himself. Previously, even if he did not make a move, Su Jiqing and the others would have the ability to break through if they were forced into a desperate situation. They just did not want to waste their energy at that time. "Everyone be careful," Su Jiqing whispered. After a while, some light white ores appeared on the walls of the cave ahead. "It's mica." Yang Haoye and the others' eyes lit up. This mica was really the rare ore they were looking for. However, most of these mica were hundreds of years old. Although they were rare, they were not the most precious. In the deepest part of the secret mine, there must be thousand-year-old mica. Yang Haoye became more and more certain. Then everyone began to collect the mica. Although these mica were only hundreds of years old, they were still rare treasures. Yi Guqin also collected some, but these mica were not of much help to repair the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. At least thousand-year-old mica was needed to repair the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. Everyone collected mica along the way, and went deep into the secret mine. Along the way, 1 or 2 death worms would occasionally appear, but they were all dealt with. "Stop!" Su Jiqing suddenly said in a low voice. Everyone immediately stopped. Because in front of them, there were 7 or 8 death worms coiled like snakes, as if they were resting. The aura of those death worms was at the peak of rank 5, which was equivalent to 7 or 8 experts at the peak of rank 9 Spirit Bridge of Heaven and Earth. More importantly, among the death worms, there were a few pieces of snow-white ores. Thousand-year-old mica. Yang Haoye and the others' breathing quickened. Yi Guqin's eyes also focused. Follow the plan, go. Su Jiqing and the others did not hesitate and directly attacked. At this time, they did not hold back and fully displayed their strength. Yang Haoye's body was covered in a blazing purple-red flame, which spread toward those death worms. Rare fire of heaven and earth. Yi Guqin did not expect that Yang Halia also had a rare fire of heaven and earth. The power that the deathworms were most afraid of was rare fire and rare thunder. Not only that, Yang Halia also took out a long flaming saber. The power sealed in it was released, and the power of each slash was incomparably strong. In addition, Zhou Yan Lu Ru and Su Jiqing also used their own methods. Yi Guqin was the most idle one, so he did not make a move. Soon, under the trump cards of Su Jiqing, Yang Halia, and the others, the 7 or 8 deathworms were also eliminated. Yang Halia and the others also collected the 1,000-year mica. Young Master Dugu, this piece is yours. Su Jiqing handed a piece of 1,000-year mica to Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin did not stand on ceremony and accepted it directly. Yang Halia and the others frowned slightly, but since Su Jiqing gave it to him personally, they could not say anything. Looks like we're lucky this time and did not encounter the rank 6 Deathworm King. Zhou Yan smiled. That shouldn't be. Su Jiqing pondered. At this time, Su Qingyu's voice sounded in Yi Guqin's mind. There's something good behind that rock wall. Could it be? Yi Guqin's mind moved. He thought for a moment, and did not send Su Jiqing and the others away. Because Yi Guqin's guess was right, the rank 6 Deathworm King was behind that rock wall. And the thing that the rank 6 Deathworm King was guarding was not as simple as the 1,000-year mica. Chapter 939. Wait! Yi Guqin suddenly said. What's wrong? Su Jiqing looked at him in confusion. There's something strange behind this rock wall. Yi Guqin said. He placed his hand on the rock wall, and gently knocked on it. A crisp sound was heard. Su Jiqing was surprised. She released her spiritual energy to sense, and her face froze. She held the sword in her jade-like hand, and thrusted it towards the cliff. The entire rock wall was instantly covered with cracks, and then it collapsed. As the gravel and dust filled the air, a deep and serene passageway appeared, and a fishy stench assaulted their nostrils. Everyone be careful. Su Jiqing's eyes focused. Even Yang Halia, Lu Ru, and the others became alert. Everyone walked into the passageway. 100 feet, 200 feet, 300 feet. Finally, they reached the end of the passage. Vaguely, a ball of milky white light spread out and shone on the faces of Yi Guqin and the others. The source of the milky white light was a milky white or about the size of a human head. There seemed to be a milky white liquid sealed in the ore. It looked very strange. What is that? Mica? Su Jiqing, Yang Halia, and the others were puzzled. They didn't know much about ores. However, Yi Guqin's eyes were filled with surprise. Faintly, there was a blazing heat surging within. Could that be millennial mica? Zhou Yan's eyes were filled with surprise and he whispered. What? Millennial mica? Yang Halia, Lu Ru and the others were shocked. Millennial mica was extremely precious and rare. Millennial mica was an extremely rare material that was second only to divine materials. Yi Guqin's eyes flashed. Zhou Yan only knew one thing, but not the other. The milky white ore in front of them was indeed millennial mica. However, the most precious part was not the millennial mica itself. It was the milky white liquid sealed in the millennial mica. I didn't expect there to be mica spirit containing saliva in this millennial mica. Even with Yi Guqin's personality, his breathing was a little hurried at this moment. Although the 10,000-year mica was precious, it was still slightly inferior to sacred materials like the 9-orifice divine stone. However, the mica spirit containing saliva was a genuine divine material. Its greatest use was not only to increase the success rate of forging and the quality of divine weapons. Most importantly, it could give the forged weapon a trace of spirituality. If this sliver of spirituality was paired with the 9 orifices divine stone that could absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth on its own, Yi Guqin was certain that the sword he forged in the future would be a famous sword with a high level of spirituality. He might even be able to possess a trace of his own consciousness. Therefore, Yi Guqin was determined to obtain the 10,000-year mica, and the mica spirit containing saliva. 10,000-year-old mica. It really is 10,000-year-old mica. Yang Halia, Lu Ru, Zhou Yan, and the others' eyes turned red. Even someone as cold as Su Jiqing could not help but be tempted. In the face of such a supreme treasure, no one could hold themselves back. Let's go. Without any hesitation, Yang Haoye, Lu Ru, Zhou Yan, and the others shot out like arrows and swept towards the 10,000-year mica. There was only one piece of the 10,000-year mica. Obviously, it was impossible to divide it equally. Therefore, it was now a matter of who could get the 10,000-year mica. Su Jiqing hesitated for a moment. Her divine soul was sharp and she vaguely felt that something was wrong. Yi Guqin did not act rashly. At this moment, there was a rock around the 10,000-year mica. It was shaped like a coiling dragon and snake, and the 10,000-year mica was in the center of the rock. However, just as Yang Haoye and the others approached the 10,000-year mica, the rock suddenly trembled violently, and its surface cracked. An incomparably strong demonic aura and a fishy smell burst out, bringing with it a strong wave of energy. Then, in front of everyone's eyes, a strange beast raised its body. The rock on the surface of its body cracked and fell off. Its head, which had no eyes and only a sharp mouth like a knife, was facing Yang Haoye and the others. Hiss. Invisible sound waves turned into waves of ripples and spread out, as if they could shatter even gold and iron. Yang Haoye and the others trembled violently, blood flowing from their ears. Their faces were full of horror. Stage 6 Deathworm King. Terrified voices came from their mouths. This strange beast was the Stage 6 Deathworm King, which was comparable to the Divine Dwelling stage. Swoosh. The Deathworm King transformed into an afterimage and shot directly towards Yang Haoye and the others. Yang Haoye, Lu Ru, and the others were scared out of their wits and abruptly retreated. Zhou Yan's reaction was a little too late. His internal chi exploded and he frantically bombarded the Deathworm King. Poochie. Blood spurted out. Zhou Yan's body was caught by the Deathworm King's mouth, and then directly crushed into countless blood flowers. Let's attack together. Yang Haoye roared. Lu Ru and Su Jiqing also attacked. At this moment, they had no choice but to use all their trump cards and go all out. Su Jiqing brought out a jade talisman. After crushing it, it burst out with a divine light and shot towards the Deathworm King. Yang Haoye and Lu Ru also revealed their trump cards. It was only now that they truly displayed their full strength. Yi Guqin also made his move, but he didn't use his trump card. Instead, he acted according to the situation. However, the Deathworm King was indeed powerful, and not on the same level as the previous Deathworms. The scales on the surface of its body had strong defensive power, and offset most of the damage. Chapter 940. Young Master Dugu? Su Jiqing looked at Yi Guqin, who seemed to have changed into a different person in an instant, and a look of surprise appeared on her face. At this moment, Yi Guqin gave her a feeling of extreme danger. Miss Su, if we work together, we may be able to kill the Deathworm King. Yi Guqin smiled and flipped the 9-dragon thunder prison in his hand. Terrifying 9-colored thunderbolts burst out and turned into countless electric sparks that covered the entire cave. After sensing the terrifying destructive power of the 9-colored profound bomb, the deathworms that wanted to surround them all retreated while hissing. They seemed to be extremely fearful. This is exotic thunderbolts? Su Jiqing looked surprised. Not only that, but the magic weapon in Yi Guqin's hand also attracted her attention. That fluctuation, a quasi-tribulation magic weapon? Even with Su Jiqing's cold and indifferent personality, she could not help but freeze. The surprise that Yi Guqin brought to her was too big. The terrifying destructive power of the 9-colored profound lightning struck fear into Su Jiqing's heart. Not to mention the quasi-tribulation magic weapon. It was a magic weapon that even a prince like Yang Haoye did not have. Dugawubai. Dugawubai. Su Jiqing muttered to herself, frowning. She vaguely felt that she had heard this name before, but she could not recall it at the moment. Yi Guqin had already made his move. The reason why he was so confident in dealing with the rank 6 Deathworm King was because he had exotic fire and exotic thunderbolts. This kind of power was the most effective against the Deathworms. At this moment, the Deathworm King's body was trembling violently and hissing. It seemed to be extremely fearful. The scales on the surface of its body could block most attacks, and even genuine qi could not cause too much damage. However, exotic fire and exotic thunderbolts could cause great damage to it. Yi Guqin performed the star-breaking sword technique. The vigorous sword qi merged with the explosive nine-colored thunderbolts and swept toward the Deathworm King. Su Jiqing also temporarily put aside her distracting thoughts and joined forces with Yi Guqin to attack. The Deathworm King's body was writhing, and the scales on its body were scorched black and fell off. Obviously, the nine-colored profound bomb had caused great damage to it. Not only that, a pitch-black flame rose from Yi Guqin's eyes. On the surface of his body, apart from the power of the nine-colored lightning, there were also pitch-black flames rising. At this moment, lightning and fire intertwined around Yi Guqin's body, making him look incomparably domineering. Heaven and earth unique flame. Su Jiqing was speechless again. She could feel that the black flame in Yi Guqin's body was obviously stronger than Yang Haoya's strange flame. Kuan Yu absolute sword. Yi Guqin raised his sword and used the second move of the three ultimates holy sword. The vigorous true qi in his body poured into the nine-dragon thunder prison, and this quasi-tribulation divine weapon began to display its true power in his hands. A beautiful cold moon appeared, bringing with it a sharp and powerful ripple. Accompanied by strange fire and thunder, it swept towards the Deathworm King. Not only that, Yi Guqin once again activated the Thunder Flood Dragon's soul in the nine-dragon thunder prison. A Thunder Flood Dragon's soul emerged from the sword, and its body was entwined with lightning. It transformed into a purgatory, temporarily imprisoning the Deathworm King, and bombarding it with endless thunder and lightning. So strong. Su Jiqing was slightly stunned, but she did not stay idle, and also used her strongest move. As a famous genius of the Cloud Billow dynasty, Su Jiqing was obviously not a flower vase. Rumble. The entire underground cavern seemed to be trembling. Under such a powerful attack, the Deathworm King's body cracked open, and stinking blood spurted out. Seeing this, Yi Guqin's eyes flashed. His sword move changed again, and above the nine-dragon thunder prison, an even more domineering thunder burst forth. The vigorous sword radiance condensed into a giant sword covered with thunder and lightning, and slashed at the Deathworm King. Divine Sword Thunder Manipulation Technique. The move that Yi Guqin used was the Divine Sword Thunder Manipulation Technique, an inferior royal-level sword technique that he had just learned. Although the Divine Sword Thunder Manipulation Technique was still a little bit away from the initial level, its power was extremely strong. Puff. The giant sword covered with thunder and lightning directly split the Deathworm King into two halves, and blood splattered out. It died just like that. Su Jiqing gasped, her chest rising and falling. She still seemed to be in disbelief. In a flash, Yi Guqin walked in front of the 10,000-year-old mica, and with a slash of his long sword he took it. Looking at the 10,000-year-old mica in Yi Guqin's hand, Su Jiqing's eyes flashed, but she did not say anything. If Yi Guqin was not there, she might have lost her life. Moreover, Su Jiqing also had the 10,000-year-old mica, so it was not that she did not gain anything. Yi Guqin did not stand on ceremony, and directly put the 10,000-year-old mica into the origin ring. He did not forget to forge a primordial sword that belonged exclusively to him. Along the way, Yi Guqin also paid attention to collecting divine materials. Now Yi Guqin already had the 9-orifice divine stone, the mica spirit containing saliva, and the 10,000-year-old mica. But it was far from enough. Young Master Dugu, you are a real man. With the crisis of life and death resolved, Su Jiqing's heart relaxed, and she also revealed a faint smile, which was extremely beautiful. There are still deathworms here, let's go out first. Yi Guqin did not say much, and directly left in a flash. Looking at Yi Guqin's back, Su Jiqing pouted, which was rare for her. This was not in line with her character. But Su Jiqing also saw a man who could ignore her like this for the first time. She stomped her feet, but still chased after him. At this moment, outside the secret mine, Yang Haoye and Lu Ru did not leave. Brother Yang, it seems that Su Jiqing has really died. Lu Ru seemed to be sad, but there was a trace of joy in her eyes. She had always been jealous of Su Jiqing, and now that Su Jiqing was dead, she naturally felt happy. Sigh. Young Haoye sighed deeply. In fact, he still hoped that Su Jiqing could escape. As for Yi Guqin, from the beginning to the end, no one cared whether he lived or died. Suddenly, young Haoye saw two figures appear at the entrance of the secret mine. Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Young Haoye could not believe his eyes. How is this possible? When she saw the two figures clearly, Lu Ru's delicate face also changed. Young Haoye stepped out and rushed to Su Jiqing and Yi Guqin's side. His expression was one of shock and bewilderment. He found it hard to believe that Su Jiqing and Yi Guqin could survive the attack of the Deathworm King. Seeing Young Haoye and Lu Ru coming over, Su Jiqing's expression was very cold, as if she was looking at strangers. Jiqing, you that Deathworm King. Young Haoye looked slightly embarrassed. Thanks to you, we came out alive. Su Jiqing's tone was sarcastic. Sister Jiqing, you can't say that. It was a crisis at that time, and it was a matter of life and death. No one could care about each other. Lu Ru was still quibbling. Hearing this, Su Jiqing's expression became even colder, and there was a hint of disgust. Yang Haoye's expression was slightly embarrassed, but he suddenly thought of something and said with a hint of urgency, You got the Millennium Mica? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.